Harold Stennett leaned back in his leather chair, swirled the whiskey in his glass, and gave the order to murder the best soldier he had ever created. "Sink the boat," he said, not even looking up from his ledger. "Let the ocean do what a bullet couldn't. And if she's still breathing when they find the wreckage, make sure nobody believes a word she says." He smiled, then the cold smile of a man who had buried the truth so many times he'd forgotten it could still crawl out of the ground. What Harold Stennett didn't know was that 3 days later, a Navy helicopter would find her alive. Before we go on, if you love stories about courage, betrayal, and the truth that refuses to die, take a second to subscribe to this channel and follow this story all the way to the end. And in the comments below, tell me the name of the city where you're watching from right now, so I can see just how far this story has traveled. Now let's begin. The North Atlantic in early March is not a place. It is a punishment. Lieutenant Commander Derek Callahan had flown over it 100 times, and every single time it looked exactly the same. An endless black skin stretched tight over something ancient and hungry, waiting for anything foolish enough to fall into it. He was 41 years old. He had 2 divorces behind him and 1 daughter he saw twice a year. And he had long ago stopped believing that the ocean cared whether a man lived or died. "Anything on the scope?" he asked into his headset. In the seat behind him, Chief Petty Officer Raymond Voss squinted at the radar. Voss was 53, gray at the temples, and had been flying rescue longer than most of the crew had been alive. "Nothing but chop and ghost, Commander. Same as the last 4 hours. So we go home empty." "We go home dry," Voss corrected. "That's a win in my book." Callahan almost laughed. It was a routine mission, a wide sweep after a cargo vessel had reported a possible man overboard 80 miles east. Those calls almost never turned into anything. A shadow on a wave, a trick of the light, a drunk deckhand who turned up asleep in the galley 2 hours later. Callahan had learned not to hope. Hope was expensive out here and it never paid you back. "Wind chills dropping," said the third voice, younger, tighter. That was Petty Officer First Class Marcus Holloway, the rescue swimmer, the man whose job it was to jump out of a perfectly good helicopter into water cold enough to stop a human heart in minutes. -11 now. Anybody in that water's already gone, sir. Been gone for days if the report's right. We know Holloway. I'm just saying." "You're always just saying," Voss muttered. "Watch your scope." They flew on in silence. The rotor beat overhead steady as a pulse, and Callahan let his mind drift the way it always did on the long empty legs, drift toward his daughter, and the birthday he'd missed drift toward the phone call he still hadn't returned, drift toward all the small failures a man collects when he spends his life pulling strangers out of the sea and can't seem to hold on to the people who actually love him. Then Voss said one word and everything changed. "Wait," Callahan snapped back. "Talk to me." "I've got something. Bearing 040? Small. Real small." Voss leaned into the screen and Callahan heard the change in the older man's breathing, that particular sharpening that comes when instinct wakes up before the brain does. "It's holding position. It's not drifting like debris, Commander. Debris tumbles. This is just sitting there. Could be a container, could be ice." "Could be," Voss said, "but it's not." Callahan banked the helicopter hard and the ocean tilted beneath them. "Holloway, get ready. If there's anything down there, I want eyes on it in 90 seconds. Sir, whatever's in that water, it's not alive. Nothing survives 3 days in -11. "Then we bring back a body," Callahan said. "That's the job, too." They dropped altitude. The spotlight cut down through the spray, and for a long moment, there was nothing but the white churn of the water and the black beyond it. Callahan felt the old familiar tightening in his chest, the one that never went away. No matter how many years you did this, the one that whispered, maybe this time, it's real." And then Voss said very quietly in a voice Callahan had never heard him use in 20 years of flying together, "Oh my God." "What? What is it?" Commander Voss said, "It's a person." Holloway pressed his face to the door. "That's not possible." "It's a person," Voss repeated, "face down, on a piece of wreckage. And Commander—" He paused and Callahan felt the hair stand up on his arms before Voss even finished the sentence. "She's moving." For a second, nobody spoke. The only sound was the rotor and the wind and the awful thunder of Callahan's own heart. "Say again," Callahan said. "She's moving. She just moved her arm. Commander, she's alive. Somebody's alive down there." Holloway shook his head fast like a man trying to wake himself up. 3 days, minus 11. That can't beat nobody. The human body doesn't. That's not a survivable, sir. The science on this is not. I've done the training. I've read the tables. Nothing lives that long in water. This cold, nothing. Then explain what you're looking at, Callahan snapped. Holloway had no answer. None of them did. Callahan brought the helicopter into a hover, fighting the wind that wanted to slap them out of the sky and put the spotlight square on the shape below. And now he could see it too. A woman. Small, dark-haired, her body draped across a jagged slab of what had once been a boat, half in and half out of the water. Her skin was the color of ash. She should have been dead. Every rule Callahan had ever learned said she should have been dead 2 days ago. And she was clutching something to her chest. Something long and dark held so tightly that even from 100 feet up, he could see the white of her knuckles. What is she holding? Callahan asked. Voss zoomed the camera. There was a long silence. Commander, Voss said slowly, that's a rifle. A what? A rifle, a big one. She's got both arms wrapped around a rifle like it's the only thing keeping her alive. Holloway laughed a short, disbelieving bark with no humor in it at all. A woman, in the middle of the North Atlantic, 3 days in freezing water, holding a rifle. Sir, what in God's name did we just find? I don't know, Callahan said. And that was the truth. In 2 decades of pulling people from the sea, he had seen every kind of horror and every kind of miracle the ocean could produce. He had seen children survive when strong men died. He had seen the sea give up its dead after months and hold on to the living for reasons no one could explain. But he had never not once seen anything like the woman below him. Holloway, he said, you're going in. The young swimmer went pale. Sir, protocol says in these conditions. Protocol says we don't leave a living soul in the water, Callahan said. She's living, so you're going in. Are you refusing? There was a beat. Then Holloway swallowed and reached for his mask. No, sir, I'm not refusing. I'm going in. Good man, Voss put a hand on Callahan's shoulder. Commander, before he goes, look at her again. What am I looking at? She's conscious, Voss said. Look at her head. She's tracking us. She knows we're here. She's watching the helicopter. Callahan looked, and Voss was right. The woman's head had turned just slightly, following the spotlight, following the shadow of the aircraft above her. Her eyes, even from this distance, even through the spray, were open. And there was something in the way she moved, some terrible controlled precision, even now half dead and freezing, that made the back of Callahan's neck go cold in a way the wind never could. That's not the movement of somebody who's dying, Voss said quietly. That's the movement of somebody who's waiting. Waiting for what? To see if we're friends, Voss said, or something else. Holloway clipped into the hoist line. Ready on the door. Holloway, listen to me. Callahan turned in his seat. She's holding a weapon. She's been out here for days. She may not know who we are. She may not be right in the head. You go in slow, you go in easy, and you keep your hands where she can see them. You understand? You think she's dangerous, sir? She's half dead. I think, Callahan said, that anybody who survives 3 days in that water is exactly as dangerous as it takes to survive 3 days in that water. Go slow. The door slid open and the roar of the world came flooding in, wind and salt and cold that hit like a fist. Holloway looked down at the black water one more time, said a prayer his grandmother had taught him, and stepped out into nothing. The cable played out. He dropped through the spray, spinning slowly, the spotlight following him down. Callahan held the hover with everything he had, fighting the gust that came out of nowhere, watching his swimmer descend toward the woman who shouldn't be alive. 50 feet, Voss called. 40, 30, he's almost on her. Holloway hit the water hard and gasped, the cold ripping the breath out of his lungs, even through the dry suit. For a second, the sea tried to pull him under, and he kicked against it, fighting his way to the wreckage where the woman lay. He got a hand on the slab. He pulled himself up beside her. Ma'am, he shouted over the wind. Ma'am, I'm with the U.S. Navy. I'm here to help you. Can you hear me? The woman's eyes were open. They were the palest gray Holloway had ever seen, and they were fixed on him with an intensity that made his stomach drop. There was no confusion in them, no fear, just a terrible, calculating stillness. Ma'am, I'm going to get you out of the water. I need you to let go of the rifle. Can you let go of the weapon for me? I need both my hands to secure you. Her lips moved. He leaned closer to hear. No, she whispered. Just that, one word. Cracked and frozen and absolutely certain. Ma'am, I can't lift you in the rifle both. The conditions are... Her hand shot out and seized his wrist. For a woman who had been 3 days in freezing water, her grip was impossible. It clamped down like a steel trap, and Holloway felt the bones of his wrist grind together. He cried out. He tried to pull back and couldn't. Those pale gray eyes held him, and her voice, when it came again, was low and clear and made the hair stand up on the back of his neck. The rifle stays with me, she said. It goes where I go. Do you understand? Okay, Holloway gasped. Okay, the rifle comes too. Just please let go of my wrist, ma'am, please. Callahan, Voss said in the cockpit, his voice tight. What's happening down there? He's not moving. I don't know. He's talking to her. Holloway report. Holloway's voice came through shaken. She's not letting go of the weapon, sir. She's got a grip on me. She's strong. She's really strong. This isn't right. This isn't how someone this hypothermic should be. She should barely be able to blink. Can you secure her? I'm trying. Holloway worked the harness around the woman's chest, and every time his hands came near the rifle, her whole body tensed like a cat about to strike. She won't let the weapon out of contact with her body. I'm rigging it to the harness. Sir, this is the strangest thing I've ever... In 10 years, I have never... She's not acting like a survivor. She's acting like a soldier who thinks she's been captured. Just get her up. Get her up now. The wind's picking up. Copy. Copy that? Holloway cinched the last strap. He looked into the woman's face. Ma'am, we're going up now. You're safe. I promise you, you're safe. For the first time, something flickered in those gray eyes, not relief, something closer to grief. Nobody's safe, she said. That's the whole problem. And then her eyes rolled back and she went limp, and the terrible strength went out of her all at once, as if she had been holding herself together by pure will, until the moment help arrived and had decided that now finally she could let go. She's out, Holloway shouted. She's unconscious. Take us up now. The hoist engaged. The cable drew taut, and slowly spinning in the spotlight, in the spray, the swimmer and the woman and the rifle rose together out of the black water toward the waiting helicopter. It took everything Callahan had to hold the hover steady while they came up. When the two of them finally tumbled through the door, soaked and shaking, the whole aircraft seemed to exhale. Voss and Holloway dragged the woman into the center of the cabin. Holloway ripped off his mask, breathing hard, his lips already blue. Get thermal blankets on her, Callahan ordered. Now, and somebody take that rifle. Holloway reached for it. The woman's eyes snapped open. I wouldn't, Holloway said, quickly pulling his hand back. Sir, even unconscious, she was reaching for it. I'm serious. Leave the rifle where it is. It's rigged to her harness. It's not going anywhere. Just don't try to take it. Voss, get on the radio to Reykjavik. Tell them we're inbound with one survivor, female severe hypothermia exposure of at least 72 hours in Voss. Callahan paused. Tell them she's stable. Tell them she's conscious. And tell them to be ready because they're not going to believe what they're looking at. Voss keyed the radio. As he did, he glanced back at the woman on the cabin floor wrapped in silver blankets, her arms still locked around a rifle the color of night. Commander, he said quietly off the air, in 30 years of this, I've pulled a lot of people out of the water. I know you have. I've never pulled one out that scared me. Callahan didn't answer. He turned the helicopter toward Iceland and pushed the throttle forward and tried not to think about the fact that he felt exactly the same way. The flight to Reykjavik took 40 minutes. For most of it, the woman lay still, her breathing shallow but steady, and the three men watched her the way you'd watch a fire you weren't sure was really out. Then about halfway through, she stirred. Easy, Holloway said, kneeling beside her. Easy now. You're on a helicopter. You're with the U.S. Navy. We're taking you to a hospital. You're going to be all right. Her lips moved. Holloway leaned in. How many? She whispered. How many what, ma'am? How many of you know I'm alive? Holloway blinked. Just us, my crew, and the hospital we called ahead to. Who did you tell? Her hand found his arm again, weaker now, but still urgent. Who did you radio? Give me names. Give me the channel. This matters more than my life. Who did you tell that you found me? Just the Naval Medical Station in Reykjavik, Holloway said, alarmed. That's protocol, ma'am. We have to call ahead so they can prep the... Then they already know, she breathed, and closed her eyes, and a single tear slid down her frozen cheek. They always know. They know everything before you do. That's how it works. That's how it's always worked. Who, ma'am? Who knows? But she had drifted off again, and Holloway sat back on his heels and looked up at Callahan with an expression the commander had never seen on the young man's face before. Sir, Holloway said, I don't think we rescued a survivor. Then what did we rescue? Holloway looked down at the woman at the ashen face and the rifle and the terrible stillness, and he said the only thing that made any sense. I think we rescued a secret, and I think somebody out there really doesn't want us to have it. The Naval Medical Station outside Reykjavik was a low-gray building that had seen every kind of emergency the North Atlantic could throw at it. When the helicopter set down on the pad, a full trauma team was already waiting, led by a woman in her 50s, with iron-gray hair pulled back tight, and the kind of eyes that had stopped being surprised by anything a long time ago. Her name was Dr. Pamela Ostrowski, and she had been treating hypothermia and exposure cases for 26 years, and she considered herself completely unshockable. She was about to find out she was wrong. Talk to me, she said as they wheeled the woman in. What am I dealing with? Female mid-30s, Holloway said, jogging alongside the gurney. Recovered from open water North Atlantic, we estimate at least 72 hours of exposure. Wind chill was -11 Celsius. Ostrowski's step faltered just for a second. Say that again. 72 hours, minimum. That's not possible. Ostrowski put 2 fingers to the woman's throat, and Callahan watched the doctor's face change, watched the certainty drain out of it, and something else creep in. Her pulse is 48, strong, regular. She pulled back an eyelid, pupils reactive. She listened to the lungs. Clear, this is... Ostrowski straightened up slowly. This is a woman who's been in freezing water for 3 days. Her body should be shutting down. Her organs should be failing. Her heart should be arrhythmic, if it's beating at all. And instead, she's presenting like she went for a cold swim this morning. So she's going to be okay, Holloway asked. Ostrowski didn't answer him. She was staring at the woman on the gurney with an expression that was equal parts fascination and fear. Get her into Bay 3, warm IV cardiac monitor, full blood work, and I want it fast. She looked at Callahan. Commander, is it a word? In private. They stepped into their quarter. Through the window, Callahan could see the team, working, could see the woman's arms, even now, even sedated, tightening reflexively whenever anyone came near the rifle they'd had to leave strapped to her side. I've been doing this since before that young man was born, Ostrowski said, nodding toward Holloway. I have seen people survive things that shouldn't be survivable. The human body is a stubborn machine. But what I just walked past in there is not stubborn. It's engineered. What do you mean engineered? I mean her hypothermia response is suppressed. Do you understand what that means? When a normal person hits cold water, the body panics. Blood rushes to the core. The heart races, then it slows, then it fails. It's a cascade. It's biology. It cannot be turned off. Ostrowski's voice dropped. Hers is turned off. Somebody turned it off. Her body has learned or been made to sit in that water calmly and simply endure it. I have read about experimental cold adaptation programs. Rumors. Military rumors. I never believed a word of them. She looked back through the window. Until about 90 seconds ago. Callahan felt something cold settle into his gut, colder than the ocean had been. Doctor, what exactly did we pull out of the water? I don't know, Ostrowski said, but it isn't a fisherman's wife who fell off a boat. Whoever she is, someone spent an enormous amount of money and time making her into whatever she is, and people don't make investments like that. She met his eyes, unless they expect a return. At that moment, a young technician came hurrying out of the bay holding a tablet, his face pale. Dr. Commander, you need to see this. The rifle. We couldn't take it off her, so we scanned it in place and, he held up the tablet, hands shaking slightly. There's something inside it, something electronic. Callahan took the tablet. On the screen was an X-ray image of the rifle, and there embedded in the stock where no rifle should have anything but wood or polymer was a small, dense rectangle. A module. A device. What is that? Callahan asked. We don't know, sir. It's shielded, heavily, but it's got its own power source, and it's still running. Whatever it is, it's been running this whole time. Even in the water, even in the cold, it never shut off. Voss, who had come up behind them, let out a low whistle. A rifle with a computer inside it. That doesn't have a legal use I can think of, Commander. Get me a specialist, Callahan said. Somebody who can crack that thing open without setting anything off. And I want a security detail on this base right now, doubled. Nobody comes in, nobody goes out without my say-so. You expecting trouble, sir? The technician asked. Callahan looked back through the window at the woman who shouldn't be alive, clutching a rifle that should have shut off days ago and a body that someone had rebuilt to survive the impossible. She told my swimmer that the people hunting her already know she's alive, Callahan said. She told him they always know first. I don't know if that's the truth or the fever talking, but I've been doing this a long time and I've learned one thing. He handed back the tablet. When somebody survives something they had no business surviving, it's because staying alive was somebody's job. And a job like that always comes with people whose job is the opposite. The specialist arrived within the hour. His name was Petty Officer Daniel Reyes, a cyber warfare technician who happened to be attached to a nearby installation, and he had the nervous, brilliant energy of a man who spent most of his time talking to machines instead of people. They set him up in a secure room with a rifle, which they had finally carefully managed to separate from the sedated woman, though not before she'd surfaced from the anesthesia twice, both times reaching for it, both times having to be gently restrained. Okay, Reyes said, turning the weapon over in his gloved hands. Okay. This is a beautiful piece of engineering, I'll say that. Custom barrel, custom action. This wasn't bought, this was built. Somebody made this for one specific shooter. He found the module in the stock and whistled. And this is the interesting part. This little box here has been recording everything, every shot this rifle ever took. Ballistics, data, GPS, environmental conditions, the whole story. Can you read it? Callahan asked. Give me time. Reyes bent to his work, and for a while there was nothing but the click of keys and the hum of equipment. Callahan and Voss and Ostrowski waited. Holloway paced, the minutes crawled. Then Reyes went very still. Sir, he said, you should come look at this. They crowded around the screen. Reyes had pulled up a log, a simple table of numbers, dates, coordinates, and one line was highlighted. This is the last entry, Reyes said. The most recent shot this rifle fired. Read the range, sir. Callahan read it. He read it again. He didn't understand it. That can't be right, he said. I checked it 4 times. Read it out loud, Voss said. I want to hear somebody say it. Reyes swallowed. The last confirmed shot from this rifle, 1 shot, distance to target. He looked up, 4,112 meters. The room went silent. That's over 2.5 miles, Holloway said slowly. That's not the world record for a confirmed long-range kill. I follow this stuff. The record is a little over 3,800 meters, and that took 3 shots and a spotter and perfect conditions, and it made international news. This is saying 4,112 in 1 shot. Maybe the machine's wrong, Voss offered. Maybe it's a glitch. It's not a glitch, Reyes said quietly. The data's clean. Wine temperature, humidity, Coriolis effect elevation, it's all logged. Every variable that would matter at that range is accounted for. Whoever took this shot didn't get lucky. They solved it, like a math problem. At 2.5 miles in 1 shot, they put a bullet exactly where they wanted it. He sat back. I've read about the physics of extreme long-range shooting. At that distance, the bullet's in the air for something like 10 seconds. The Earth literally rotates underneath it. You have to aim at where the target will be, not where it is. And the margin for error is measured in fractions of an inch across 2.5 miles. He looked at the sedated woman on the monitor. A human being did that. And then that same human being survived 3 days in the North Atlantic. And you're telling me they're the same person. Nobody spoke. Then from the doorway, a new voice. Rough, quiet, certain. That shot doesn't exist. They turned. A man stood there in the plain clothes that somehow announced special operations louder than any uniform could. He was older, weathered, with the stillness of someone who had spent his life in places most people would never know existed. Callahan didn't know him, but he knew the type. And you are? Callahan asked. Master Chief, retired. I consult. The man came into the room, his eyes on the screen. I train as snipers for 11 years. Best in the world. And I'm telling you that shot doesn't exist. A kill at 4,100 meters is not a shot. It's a myth. It's the things shooters talk about the way sailors talk about mermaids. It's not real. The data says it's real, Reyes said. Then the data's lying, or the Master Chief trailed off. He stepped closer to the screen. He read the log, he read the environmental data, and Callahan watched a man who had probably never been surprised by anything in his professional life go slowly completely pale. "What is it?" Callahan asked. The Master Chief didn't answer right away. When he did, his voice had changed. "The correction data," he said, "the adjustments the shooter made, the way they compensated for the spin drift, the vertical, the atmospheric layers at altitude." He shook his head slowly. "I've never seen anybody solve it like this. Not any shooter I ever trained, not any shooter alive that I know of. This isn't a person who's very good at shooting." He turned around, and his face was the face of a man looking at something he'd been told his whole career was impossible. "This is a person who was built to do exactly this. Someone took a human being and turned them into an instrument. Everything I just read, the calm, the precision, the total mastery of variables, no human should be able to hold in their head at once. That's not talent. That's not training. That's a program." He looked at the woman on the monitor. "Where did you say you found her?" "Face down in the ocean," Callahan said, "holding this rifle, refusing to let go of it." The Master Chief nodded slowly as if something was falling into place, and Callahan didn't like the look on his face at all. "I heard rumors years ago," the Master Chief said, "about a program, not on any books, not in any budget you could find. They took kids, orphans, children with no families, no records, nobody to ask questions if they disappeared, and they made them into shooters. Started them young before the fear sets in, before the conscience gets in the way. Taught them ballistics like other kids learn arithmetic. I always thought it was a ghost story, something the old-timers told to scare the new guys." He looked at the sedated woman. "But that shot is real, and a person who could take that shot is real. And she's lying in your medical bay right now, 30 feet away." Ostrowski spoke up, her voice tight. "You're saying somebody raised children to be assassins." "I'm saying it," the Master Chief said, "that if I'm right about what she is, then she's the most valuable and the most dangerous human being any of you have ever been in a room with. And the people who made her do not lose things. They do not misplace assets. If she's here, if she's alive, it's because she fought her way out of something she was never supposed to fight her way out of. And they will come for her. Make no mistake, they will come." As if the universe had been waiting for the words, an alarm began to sound somewhere in the building. Not a loud one, a soft, insistent chime, a perimeter alert. Callahan's blood went cold. "Voss, what is that?" Voss was already moving to a terminal. He pulled up the security feed. His hand stopped over the keys. "Commander," he said, "we've got a vehicle at the outer gate, unmarked. Says it's a medical transfer team. Came to collect a patient." He looked up. "We didn't call for any transfer." "Who authorized them?" "That's the thing." Voss's voice was very steady, the way a man's voice gets steady when he's genuinely afraid. "The paperwork's real. It's got proper authorization codes, signatures, everything. It came through official channels 4 hours ago." He met Callahan's eyes. "Sir, 4 hours ago we hadn't even landed yet. This transfer request was filed before we pulled her out of the water, before anybody on this earth except us knew she was alive." The room went dead silent. On the monitor, the woman's eyes opened. She turned her head slowly toward the camera in her room, toward the men watching her as if she could feel them there, as if she had been waiting for exactly this moment. Her cracked lips moved. There was no microphone in the room, but every man there could read what she said. "They're here." "Lock it down," Callahan said, and his voice did not shake because 20 years of pulling people out of the sea had taught him that the only thing that helps in the worst moments is a calm voice giving clear orders. "Lock down the whole facility. Nobody in, nobody out. That transfer team does not get through that gate. Voss, get me a line to the base commander and to my superiors, real ones I can verify. Reyes, I want you to copy everything on that module right now, onto every drive you can find, and I want copies going out on every secure channel we've got. If somebody's trying to make this woman disappear, then the one thing we can do is make sure her story can't." Sir Holloway said, "Who are these people who files a transfer request for someone before she's even been rescued?" Callahan looked through the window at the woman. She was sitting up now in defiance of everything her body should have allowed, watching the door of her room with those pale gray eyes, calm and ready and utterly alone. People who knew she was going to be found, Callahan said, because they're the ones who put her in the water in the first place. And they didn't sink her boat to kill her. If they wanted her dead, she'd be dead. They sank her boat to see where she'd wash up and who'd pick her up. He turned away from the window. We just told them exactly where she is. The chime kept sounding soft and steady, like a countdown. And somewhere out beyond the gate in the dark, and the coal professionals who did not lose things had come to collect what belonged to them, and the only people standing between them and the woman who shouldn't exist were a rescue pilot, an old radar operator, a young swimmer, a doctor, a nervous technician, and a retired ghost who had just realized that all the stories he thought were made up had been true the entire time. The woman on the other side of the glass looked up at the camera one more time, and Callahan, watching her, understood something that turned his stomach to ice. She wasn't afraid. In her whole ravaged, engineered 3 days frozen body, there wasn't a single trace of fear. There was only that terrible calm, the calm of someone who had been waiting her entire life for the enemy to arrive and who had one last thing left to do before they did. "Get me in that room," Callahan said. "I need to talk to her before they get through that gate, because right now she's the only one who knows what we're really up against. And something tells me she's been waiting a very long time for somebody to finally ask." He put his hand on the door. On the monitor, the woman's lips moved one more time, and this time there was almost the ghost of a smile on her frozen face, the smile of a soldier who has finally, against all odds, reached the one person she needed to reach. "You found me," she mouthed. "Now let me tell you why they sank the boat." And Callahan opened the door. The room was small and white and too warm, and the woman sat on the edge of the bed with the rifle back in her arms because in the 2 minutes it had taken Callahan to reach the door, she had already talked the technician into giving it back to her. Callahan didn't ask how. He looked at her and she looked at him, and for a long moment, neither of them said anything at all. "You're the pilot," she said finally. It wasn't a question. "The one who wouldn't leave me in the water." Lieutenant Commander Derek Callahan. "You should have left me." She said it without drama, the way another person might comment on the weather. "It would have been simpler. For you, for your crew, for everyone." She turned her head toward the small window where the perimeter chime was still sounding somewhere down the hall. "You've killed all of them, you know, by bringing me here. Those men out there don't leave witnesses." "Then you'd better tell me who they are," Callahan said, "so we can do something about it." She looked back at him and something shifted in those pale gray eyes. Surprise, maybe, as if she hadn't expected him to fight, as if in whatever life had made her nobody ever fought. "My name is Evelyn Carter," she said. "That's not the name I was born with. I don't remember the name I was born with. They took that away when I was 6 years old along with everything else." She tightened her grip on the rifle. "But Evelyn Carter is the name they'll be looking for, and the man who sent those people, the man who has spent the last 3 days waiting to hear whether the ocean killed me for him, his name is Harold Stennett. Write it down. Say it into a recorder. Because if I don't make it out of this building, that name is the only thing that matters." Callahan pulled out his phone and turned on the voice recorder and set it on the small table between them. "Harold Stennett," he repeated. "Say it again, for the record." "Harold Stennett," her voice was steady, "private defense contractor. Owns companies you've never heard of that own other companies you've never heard of. On paper, he sells logistics and security consulting to allied governments. In reality, he runs a network of off-the-books operators who do the things governments want done, but can never admit to wanting." A pause. "Things like me." Down the hall, Voss's voice crackled over Callahan's radio. "Commander, that transfer team is still at the gate. They're not leaving. They're not forcing it either. They're just waiting. It's like they're on a schedule and they know something we don't." "Copy," Callahan said. "Hold the line. Nobody through that gate." He turned back to Evelyn. "They're waiting. Why are they waiting?" For the first time, a shadow of a smile crossed her face. "Because they're not the real team," she said. "The men at the gate are a distraction. Stennett's real people are already inside or already coming in a way you're not watching. The gate is theater. It's meant to make you focus everything on the front door." Her eyes flicked to the ceiling, to the vents, to the window. "How's your back door, Commander?" Callahan keyed the radio without taking his eyes off her. Voss, the gate's a decoy. Get eyes on every other entrance. Roof service, tunnels, the medevac pad, everything. Right now." There was a pause, then Voss came back and his voice had changed. "Sir, the camera on the east loading dock just went dark. 30 seconds ago. I thought it was a glitch." "It's not a glitch," Evelyn said quietly. "It's not a glitch," Callahan repeated into the radio. "Get security to the east dock now. Weapons ready? Move." He looked at Evelyn and she looked back at him with that terrible calm, and he understood that she had known this would happen, had probably known the exact sequence of it, because she had been on the other side of operations like this her entire life. She had been the one coming through the back door. She'd been the one making the front gate into theater. "How much time do we have?" he asked. Before they reached this room, she considered it the way an engineer considers a load calculation. If your people are good, 4 minutes. If they're not, 2. She shifted the rifle in her arms, which is why you need to stop asking me who they are and start listening to what's inside this weapon. Because that's the only thing that changes anything. Killing me is easy for them. But if the story gets out, if the world learns what's in this rifle, then it doesn't matter whether I live or die. That's what I've been carrying across an ocean, Commander. Not a gun, a confession. At that moment, Rhea's voice came through the radio, high and fast and frightened. "Commander, the module, it's fighting me. Something inside it is trying to wipe itself. There's a kill signal. Someone's trying to remote wipe the data. I'm racing it. I'm copying as fast as I can, but I don't know if I can save all of it. Sir, I'm losing files in real time here." Evelyn went rigid. "They're wiping it remotely. Stennett would rather destroy the evidence than risk it getting out. Tell your man to pull the module's antenna. Physically, rip it out. If it can't receive the signal, it can't complete the wipe. Reyes, can you hear that? Pull the antenna out of the module. Physically disable it. There's no external weight. I see it. There's a hair-thin wire. Okay, I'm cutting it. I'm got it." A ragged breath over the radio. "The wipe stopped. It stopped, sir. I lost maybe 15%, but I've got the rest. I've got most of it. I'm copying now everything, all channels going out wide." Evelyn closed her eyes for a moment, and Callahan saw something cross her face that he hadn't seen before. Relief, just a flicker of it, as if a weight she'd been carrying for 3 days had shifted just slightly off her chest. 15%, she murmured. "They cut 15%. Her eyes opened. "Do you know what they'd have paid to cut all of it? Do you know what 15% of my life is worth to them? Men have died for less than 1% of what's on that module." "Tell me what's on it," Callahan said. "In your words, so I understand what I'm protecting." She was quiet for a moment. Down the hall there was a sound, not a loud one, a soft, wet thud, and then nothing. The kind of sound that means a person has just stopped being a threat or stopped being anything at all. Neither of them acknowledged it. 17, Aunt Evelyn said. 17 confirmed kills over 14 months. Every one of them logged in that module. Not just the shot data, the evidence. For every target I was given a file, a justification, why this person needed to die. Financial crimes, trafficking, terrorism. The files were meant to make me a believer, to make me think I was cleaning the world. Her voice hardened. And for a while I did believe. God help me, I believed. Because when you've been raised from the age of 6 to be a weapon, the only thing that makes it bearable is telling yourself the weapon is pointed at monsters. And then the files stopped adding up. She looked at him. You start to notice things if you're paying attention. And I was trained to pay attention. The targets stopped being terrorists and traffickers. They started being lawyers, journalists. An accountant in Zurich, who I later learned had been about to testify about defense contract fraud. A woman in Singapore who ran a small nonprofit that tracked illegal arms shipments. These weren't monsters, Commander. These were inconveniences. People who knew too much. People who were about to say something out loud that Harold Stennett needed to stay quiet. The radio crackled. Voss. Commander Eastdock is secured. We've got one down. Not ours. Ours are okay. One hostile down. But there were 2 on the camera before it went dark. We've only accounted for 1. Copy, Callahan said. Find the second one. Assume he's inside. Assume he's headed our way. There's only 2, Evelyn said almost to herself. That's not enough for a full extraction. That's a scout element, which means the real team is still, They're still... She stopped, her head tilted, listening to something Callahan couldn't hear. How many floors does this building have? 3. Why, because a scout element of 2 means they're confirming I'm here before they commit the main force. They don't want to burn a full team on a rumor. Once these 2 report back or fail to report back, the real assault comes. She looked at him with grim clarity. Your 2 minutes just became your last 10. Whatever you need from me, ask it now. Callahan made a decision. He'd made a career out of split-second decisions, out of trusting his gut when the ocean was trying to kill somebody and there was no time to think. His gut told him this woman was telling the truth. His gut told him the story inside that rifle was worth every life in the building. The mission you refused, he said. You said the files stopped adding up. What was the one you wouldn't do? Something broke in her face then, just slightly, the first genuine crack in all that engineered calm. His name was Dr. Aaron Feld, she said. A researcher, academic. He'd been studying supply chains, tracing where certain weapons ended up. He was going to publish. He was going to name names, and one of the names was going to be Stennett's. She swallowed. They gave me the file. Standard justification dressed him up as a national security threat, and I did what I always did. I did my homework. I watched him. For 3 weeks, I watched Aaron Feld through a scope from a mile away, waiting for the window. Her voice dropped so low, Callahan had to lean in. He had 2 children, a boy and a girl. Every morning he made them breakfast because his wife worked early. He was terrible at it. He burned the eggs every single time. And every single time, those kids laughed at him and ate the burned eggs anyway because their father made them. She looked up, and her gray eyes were wet. I had been trained to feel nothing, and I sat there with my finger on the trigger of the most accurate rifle ever built. And I watched a bad cook love his children, and for the first time in my life, I felt everything. All of it. 29 years of it all at once. So you didn't take the shot? I didn't take the shot. She wiped her face with the back of one hand, quick and angry, as if she resented her own tears. I packed up my equipment and I walked away, and I sent a message up the chain that the target was clear and the mission was scrubbed. Weather, I said. No window. And I knew even as I sent it that I had just signed my own death warrant. Because you don't refuse Harold Stennett. Assets that develop a conscience are defective assets, and defective assets get recalled. The boat, Callahan said. The boat, she nodded. They put me on a vessel. Told me I was being rotated to a safe house for reassignment. Middle of the night, middle of the North Atlantic, they sabotaged it and put me over the side and let the ocean do their work for them. Clean, deniable, no body, no evidence, no questions, just an asset lost at sea. A bitter smile. They forgot one thing. What? They forgot who they made me. She lifted the rifle slightly. They spent 23 years teaching my body to survive things human bodies can't survive. They suppressed my cold response so I could lie in a snowbank for 2 days waiting for a target without freezing to death. They rebuilt me from the inside out to be the last thing standing when everything else failed. Her eyes were hard now and the tears were gone. And then they threw me in the coldest water on earth and expected me to die. They made me too well, Commander. They made me impossible to kill. And then they were surprised when I didn't. The radio came alive again, and this time it was Reyes, and his voice was shaking with something that wasn't fear. Commander, the data. I've been going through it while I copy. There, sir, there's a second partition. There's a whole second section of this module that's separate from the kill logs. It's encrypted differently. Way heavier. Military grade doesn't even cover it. Whatever's in there, they buried it deeper than the 17 kills, deeper than everything. Evelyn went very still. Can you open it? Callahan asked. Not yet, not without more time, and probably not without help. But sir, I ran a size check on it. The 17 kill logs, all the evidence, all the ballistics, all of it together is a few hundred megabytes. This second partition. A pause. It's 40 times bigger, sir. 40 times. Callahan looked at Evelyn. What's in the second partition? For a long moment, she didn't answer. When she finally spoke, her voice had changed, gone quiet and distant, as if she were speaking from somewhere very far away and very long ago. I don't know exactly, she said, but I know it's not just mine. What does that mean? It means 17 kills is my number. My 14 months. My war. She met his eyes. But I wasn't the only one, Commander. I was never the only one. There were others in the program, other children, other assets. I knew some of them growing up. We trained together before they separated us, before they taught us not to form attachments because attachments are a liability in a weapon. She looked down at the rifle. This module doesn't just hold my record. I think it holds all of them. Everyone the program ever made, every shot every one of us ever took, every file, every justification, every inconvenient person who ever got in Harold Stennett's way. She looked up, and there was something almost like awe in her voice and something like horror. I think I've been carrying the entire history of the program across the ocean. I think that's why they didn't just blow the boat to pieces. They needed to know it went down clean. They needed the module at the bottom of the sea where nobody would ever find it. And instead, a helicopter found you, Callahan finished. Instead, a pilot who wouldn't leave a body in the water, she said, pulled the most dangerous secret in the world out of the ocean and carried it straight into a building full of people. And now the only man who can make that secret disappear is coming here to do exactly that. She stood up slowly, the rifle in her hands, and Callahan saw that despite everything, despite 3 days in freezing water, she moved like a predator, balanced and controlled and lethal. So we have a choice to make. You and I, right now in the next 30 seconds. What choice? You can put me back in a bed and let your security handle what's coming, and they will die, all of them, because they are good men, but they were trained to stop drunks and thieves, not to stop what Stennett is sending. Her gray eyes locked on his. Or you can give me my rifle and my legs in a good angle, and you can let me do the one thing on this earth I was made to do, because there is no one, Commander, no one alive, who can hold a doorway against professionals better than the professional they built to be the best of all of them. Callahan looked at her. Every instinct he had, every rule, and every protocol screamed that you did not hand a weapon to a self-described assassin in the middle of a hospital. And yet, he thought of Voss and Holloway. He thought of the young security kids in the halls who'd signed up to guard a quiet naval station in Iceland and had no idea what was walking toward them. He thought of the story in the rifle's 17 kills in a second partition 40 times larger. A whole hidden history that Harold Stennett would burn this entire building to the ground to erase. If I give you that rifle, Callahan said slowly, how do I know you won't just walk out of here and disappear? You've got your evidence. You don't need us. Evelyn Carter looked at him for a long, long moment, and then she did something Callahan didn't expect. She reached out and set the rifle down on the bed and stepped back from it and held up her empty hands. Because I'm tired of disappearing, she said, and her voice cracked on the word, all the engineered calm falling away to reveal the exhausted, grieving, furious human being underneath. I've been disappearing my whole life. They disappeared me when I was 6. They disappeared the people I loved. They disappeared 17 human beings through the scope of that rifle, and I let them because I believed the lie. And then I tried to disappear. One man's murder, one bad cook, who loved his kids, and they decided to disappear me for it. She took a breath that shook. I don't want to vanish into the ocean and let this be a rumor. I don't want to be another ghost story the old-timers tell. I want Harold Stennett to have to look at what he built. I want the whole world to look at it, and I can't do that alone, Commander. I've never been able to do anything alone. They made sure of that. So I'm asking you. She looked at the rifle, then back at him. Give me the gun, not so I can run, so I can stand. For the first time in my life, let me point this thing at the man who deserves it. Yes, I can. Down the hall, a door slammed, then another. Boots moving fast, moving with purpose. Voss's voice exploded over the radio. Contact! We've got contact on the 2nd floor, multiple hostiles. They came up the service stairwell. They're through the security checkpoint. Their commander, they went through my men like they weren't even there. These aren't normal. These are... How many? Callahan barked. 4, maybe 5. They're fast. They're headed for the medical wing. They're headed for you. Callahan looked at Evelyn Carter standing there with her empty hands and her wet eyes and her 23 years of being a weapon. Somebody else pointed. He thought about his daughter and the birthday he'd missed and all the times in his life he'd chosen the safe thing, the protocol. The thing that kept his hands clean and let other people pay the price. He picked up the rifle, and he handed it to her. "Show me," he said. Something moved through Evelyn Carter's face fast and complicated gratitude and grief and a fierce, terrible readiness. She took the rifle, and the moment it was back in her hands, she became someone else, or maybe someone more, the calm settling over her like armor, her breathing dropping into a slow, controlled rhythm, her whole body going quiet and lethal. "This room's a death trap," she said. "One door, no angles. We move." She was already at the doorway, checking the hall, moving with a smoothness that made Callahan's own trained instincts look clumsy. That junction at the end of the hall, the one where 3 corridors meet. Get me there. It's the only place in this wing with a clear firing line in 3 directions. If they want to reach this wing, they have to come through that junction. And if I'm holding that junction, they don't come through at all. Voss Holloway converge on the quarter junction in the medical wing. Bring everyone. We're making a stand. Callahan followed her into the hall, his own sidearm drawn. Reyes, keep copying, keep sending, do not stop until every byte of that module is somewhere Stennett can't reach. If we go down, that data goes out anyway. That's the mission now. The data is the mission. "Copy, sir," Reyes said, and to his credit, his voice was steadier, now a frightened man deciding to be brave. "It's going out. I've got it going to 3 secure servers, a federal contact, and I'm trying to reach a prosecutor's office in Brussels that handles this kind of sir. There's a name in the metadata, someone the program was clearly worried about, a federal prosecutor named Douglas Haynes. He's got a whole flag on him in these files, and I think he's been building a case." "Then send it to him," Evelyn said sharply, close enough to the radio to be heard. "Douglas Haynes, he's real. He's been chasing Stennett for years and never had proof. Send him everything. He's the one who can end this." She reached the junction and dropped to one knee, the rifle coming up her eye, finding the scope, her body settling into stillness. "Get behind me, all of you, and whatever happens, whatever you see, do not step in front of this barrel." They came together at the junction in a matter of seconds, Voss and Holloway and 3 security personnel, breathing hard, faces tight with fear. And there in the center of them knelt a woman who 20 minutes ago had been a dying body on a slab of wreckage, now transformed into the most dangerous thing in the building, the rifle steady in her hands, her breathing slow and even, her pale eyes fixed on the far end of the corridor where the boots were getting louder. "Ma'am," Holloway said, his voice tight, "you sure you can, 3 days in the water, you can barely—" "Petty officer," Evelyn said, without taking her eye from the scope, and her voice was perfectly eerily calm. "I once put a bullet into a man from 2.5 miles away after lying in the snow for 31 hours. This hallway is 40 feet long." A pause. "I could do this in my sleep. I've done harder things awake." The boots stopped. Silence fell over the corridor, the thick, waiting silence that comes right before violence. Callahan crouched behind Evelyn with his sidearm raised, his heart hammering, and he understood with total clarity that whatever happened in the next 60 seconds would decide not just whether they lived, but whether the truth Evelyn Carter had carried across an entire ocean would survive to see daylight. "They're stacking up at the end of the hall," Evelyn murmured. 2, no 3 of them. "They'll come around that corner low and fast. First man will draw fire, the others will flow behind him." Her finger settled onto the trigger, feather light. "They're good, but I know exactly how they were trained." The faintest, coldest smile touched her lips. "Because I was trained by the same people. Every move they're about to make, I made it first 1,000 times, when I was still young enough to think it was a game." "Evelyn," Callahan said quietly, "when this is over, if we make it out, you don't disappear. You come with us. You tell Douglas Haynes everything. You put Stennett in front of the whole world." "When this is over," she said, and for just one heartbeat, her calm cracked. And underneath it, Callahan saw something he hadn't expected to see in a face like hers, hope raw and fragile and human. "I'll do anything you want. I'll testify. I'll stand up in any courtroom on earth. I'll say every name and every date, and I'll make them look at what they did." Her finger tightened by a fraction. "But first I have to get us all out of this hallway alive. So do me a favor, Commander." "Anything." "Stop talking," she said, "and watch what they made me." The first man came around the corner low and fast, exactly as she'd said he would, and the corridor filled with the crack of the rifle, and Evelyn Carter, 3 days out of the freezing ocean, began to do the one thing on this earth she had been built to do. The first man went down before he'd finished his turn around the corner, And the second one was already committed, already flowing into the space behind him, the way they'd been trained. And Evelyn Carter put the round through his shoulder before his boots had touched the center of the corridor. He spun and dropped and did not get up. And the third man, the smart one, pulled back around the corner instead of pressing the attack, and the silence came slamming back down over the hallway. Two down, Evelyn said, her voice flat and even as if she were reading a grocery list. One thinking, he's the dangerous one now. The other two believed the plan. This one just learned the plan doesn't work here. Behind her, Holloway was breathing like he'd run a mile. That was, ma'am, that was two shots. They were moving. That was, petty officer, I need you quiet, she said not unkindly. I need to hear him think. She held the rifle steady, her eye never leaving the corner where the third man had vanished. He's calling it in right now. He's telling Stennett's people that the asset is armed and holding a defensive position, which means the next thing that happens is they stop sending men around that corner. A pause. And start sending things that don't have to come around the corner. Callahan felt the cold spread through his chest. Meaning what? Meaning gas or flashbangs or a breaching charge through that wall. They'll adapt. They always adapt. She shifted her weight slightly. How well do you know this building, Commander? Not well, it's not my station. Then find someone who does and find them in the next 60 seconds because I need to know what's on the other side of these walls before Stennett's people decide to make new doors. Voss was already on it, keying the radio, raising the base's duty officer, a young lieutenant named Park, who'd been locked in the operations center since the alert. Park, this is Voss. I need building schematics for the medical wing right now, specifically the corridor junction. What's behind these walls? Park's voice came back thin and scared. Chief, the east wall of that junction backs onto a supply corridor. The west wall is exterior. There's a maintenance access panel about 10 feet from the junction on the north side. It goes down into the utility level. Evelyn's head turned a fraction. Utility level? That's how the second scout got in, and that's how they'll flank us. She made a decision fast. Holloway, that access panel, I need it covered. If it opens, you empty your weapon into it and you don't stop until I tell you. Can you do that? Holloway's face was pale, but he moved. I can do that. Good man. She said it the same way Callahan had back on the helicopter, and Callahan noticed, and something turned over in his chest at how naturally command came to her, at how 23 years of being a weapon had also somewhere in there made her a leader. The seconds crawled. Somewhere out beyond the corner, Callahan could hear movement, low voices, the sounds of professionals reorganizing after a plan had failed. And then the smell reached them, sharp and chemical. Gas, Evelyn said. Told you. Everybody down and cover your faces. Breathe through your sleeve. It's a disorientation agent. It won't kill you, but it'll make you wish it had. Do not panic. Do not run. They want you to run into that corridor. That's the whole point. She pulled the collar of her hospital gown up over her nose and mouth and did not move an inch. Her eyes still locked on the corner, and Callahan realized she wasn't even bothering to protect herself, that whatever they'd done to her body gas that would drop a normal man was just weather to her. The canister rolled around the corner, hissing white, and a heartbeat behind it came the third man sprinting through his own smoke, betting everything on the gas, having broken the defenders. He was wrong. Evelyn's rifle spoke once, and the man folded mid-stride and skidded to a stop 3 feet from the muzzle of her weapon, and she was already tracking back to the corner before his body had stopped moving. 3, she said. That was the last of the entry team. There'll be a pause now. They'll wait for the chiefs to clear and reassess. She finally allowed herself half a breath. You all did well. Nobody ran. That's why you're alive. Reyes! Callahan coughed, his eyes streaming from the gas. Talk to me. The data. Reyes's voice came back muffled, and Callahan realized the tech had barricaded himself in the secure room. Sir, I've got the kill logs out, all 17. They're on 3 servers, and I've confirmed receipt from your federal contact. The evidence files are going now, but sir, that second partition, the big one, I can't crack it from here. I think it needs a key, and the key's not in the module. It's like the module is a lock, and the key is somewhere else entirely. Evelyn's whole body changed. Say that again. The second partition, it's asking for an external key, a physical one maybe, or a code that isn't stored anywhere on the device. Whatever's in there, it's locked with something that isn't here. For a long moment, Evelyn Carter said nothing, And then slowly she reached up with one hand, still holding the rifle steady with the other, and touched the side of her own head, just behind her ear. "The key isn't in the module," she said quietly, "because the key is me." Callahan stared at her. "What are you talking about?" "The 112-meter shot." Her voice had gone strange and distant. "You said it yourself, Commander, or your specialist did. It wasn't just a record. The whole solution, every variable, the way I compensated all of it is unique. No one else could reproduce it. It's a signature. It's mine and only mine, the way a fingerprint is." She lowered her hand. "They built the second partition to open for one thing only, the exact ballistic signature of the person who took that impossible shot. It's the ultimate lock, because to open the vault that holds the history of the entire program, you'd need the one asset capable of the one shot no one else could make." A bitter, incredulous sound escaped her. "They made me the key to their own graveyard. And they never imagined I'd be the one holding it." "Then we can open it," Callahan said. "You take that shot again and—" "It's not that simple, Soyce." She shook her head. "The shot isn't a password I type in. It's a full reproduction. The exact rifle, the exact conditions logged in the module, the exact solution executed live. The module has to watch me solve an impossible shot in real time and confirm it matches the signature. Which means somewhere at some point, I'd have to actually take a shot at that range under those conditions and let the module verify it." She looked at the rifle in her hands. "There's exactly one person alive who can open that vault. And she's kneeling in a gas-filled hallway with a target painted on her back." The radio crackled. It was a new voice, one Callahan didn't recognize, smooth and calm and utterly without warmth. And it was coming through the base's own intercom system, which meant someone had reached the operations center. "Good Carter, bro," the voice said. "It's been a long time." Evelyn went completely still. The color drained from her face in a way 3 days of freezing ocean hadn't managed. "You know that voice?" Callahan said. "I know that voice," she whispered. "That's Marcus Vale. He was my handler. From the beginning. Since I was 6 years old, he was the one who he raised me in the only way anything raised me. He taught me to shoot. He taught me to feel nothing." Her hands had begun very slightly to tremble. "If Vale is here, then Stennett didn't send a team. He sent the one man on Earth who knows me better than I know myself." The voice continued, warm and terrible. "You've done something very foolish, Evelyn. You've involved good people in something that was only ever going to end one way. Those men and women in that hallway with you. They have families. That pilot has a daughter, doesn't he, Derek? 10 years old. He missed her birthday last month." A pause. "I always taught you that attachment is a liability. Do you remember you never fully believed me? And now look. Look at all the people about to die because Evelyn Carter finally decided she wanted a family." Callahan felt the blood leave his face. "How does he know about my daughter?" "Because that's what they do," Evelyn said, and there was a rawness in her voice now, 23 years of buried fury rising to the surface. "They find the thread and they pull it. They find the thing you love and they make it a weakness. It's the first thing they teach and the last thing you unlearn." She keyed the radio herself, her thumb pressing the button, and when she spoke, her voice was steady again, cold and clear as the ocean that had failed to kill her. "Hello, Marcus." "Evelyn." The warmth in Vale's voice was obscene. "You look tired. You've been through so much. Come to the operations center. Just you. Leave the rifle. And I promise you every other person in that building walks out alive. That's the deal. Your life for theirs. It's the only decent thing you have left to offer them after what you've cost them." "He's lying," Callahan said immediately. "Evelyn, he's lying, don't?" "Of course he's lying." She released the radio button. "Marcus Vale has never told the truth in his life. If I walk into that room, he kills me, and then he kills all of you anyway. Anyway, because you've all seen too much. The offer isn't real. It's a lever. He's trying to make me choose. He's trying to put the weight of your lives on me because he knows that's the one thing that might break me now that I've decided to care." She looked at Callahan and her eyes were wet again, but her voice didn't waver. "He taught me that. He taught me how to do exactly this to other people. And now he's doing it to me. And the terrible thing is, it's working. Because I don't want you to die. I don't want your daughter to grow up without her father because I washed up on the wrong piece of wreckage." "Then we don't play his game," Callahan said. We change it. How do you, Callahan's mind was moving fast now, the way it moved when the ocean was trying to kill somebody, and there was exactly one path through it. He wants you in that operations center. He wants you to come to him. So we don't. We make him come to us, or better, we make him irrelevant. He turned. Reyes, can you hear all this? Every word, sir. Reyes's voice was tight. And sir, I've been thinking. Vale's in the ops center. That means he's got access to the base's whole communication system. That's how he's on the intercom. But that also means he can try to jam my uplinks. If he figures out I'm streaming the data out, he'll cut every line in the building. Then send it all now, Callahan said. Everything you've got. The 17 kills the evidence, all of it, before he thinks to stop you. And Reyes, that second partition, the locked one, is there any way to send the lock container itself, even without the key? Maybe I can send the encrypted blob. Nobody could open it without Evelyn taking the shot, but at least it'd be out there. It exists somewhere. Stennett couldn't reach. Do it. Send the locked vault to Douglas Haynes in Brussels, along with everything else. Even if it stays locked forever, they'll know it exists. They'll know there's a whole hidden history sitting in a vault that only one person on Earth can open. Callahan looked at Evelyn. And that makes you the most protected witness in the world. Because as long as you're the only key, they can't afford to kill you. Not until they've gotten that vault open. You just became too valuable to murder. Something shifted in Evelyn's face. Understanding. And then slowly something that was almost a smile. You just flipped it, she said quietly. For 23 years, I was valuable because of what I could do. You just made me valuable because of what I know. Those are very different kinds of valuable, Commander. One of them gets you killed the moment you're inconvenient. Her smile grew cold and sharp. The other one keeps you alive precisely because you're inconvenient. Send it, Reyes, Callahan said, right now. Sending everything, going wide. Federal contact Brussels, 3 backup servers, and I'm CCing every oversight office I can find an address for. A pause, then a burst of frantic typing audible over the line. It's going, come on, come on. And then the lights went out. The whole building plunged into darkness, and a half-second later, the emergency lights flickered on dim and red, and every screen, every radio, every electronic system in the building died at once. He cut the power, Voss said. He cut everything. Reyes, Callahan shouted. Reyes, did it go through? Silence. Reyes report, nothing. The radios were dead, the building was dark, and somewhere in the operations center, Marcus Vale had just pulled the plug on the entire facility. He was too late, Evelyn said. She had gone very still, listening to the dark. Or he wasn't. We won't know until this is over. But he cut the power for a reason, Commander, and the reason isn't just to stop the data. It's this. She raised the rifle. He knows I'm at my most dangerous with a clear line of sight and good light. So he took away the light. He's even-ing the field, which means Marcus Vale is about to come down that corridor himself in the dark. And he is the one man alive who trained me and never let me beat him. Her voice dropped. In 23 years, I never once won a live exercise against Marcus Vale. Not once. He always saw it coming. He always knew what I'd do before I did it. Then don't do what he expects, Callahan said. That's the problem. She almost laughed, a small, broken sound in the red-lit dark. He knows what I'd do to surprise him. He trained the part of me that improvises. There is no move I can make that he didn't teach me to make. She was quiet for a moment, and then softly she said something that chilled Callahan to the bone. Except one. There's one thing he never accounted for. One variable he could never have programmed into me because he spent my whole life trying to burn it out. What, that I might at the end choose someone else's life over my own. She looked at Callahan in the red light, and her face was open and raw and entirely human. He built a weapon that survives, that endures, that does whatever it takes to keep itself alive to complete the mission. He never built one that would die on purpose to save a room full of strangers. Because a weapon that does that isn't a weapon anymore. It's a person. Her voice broke slightly. And Marcus Vale never believed I could become a person. That's his blind spot. That's the one thing he'll never see coming. Evelyn, Callahan said, and his voice was low and urgent. Whatever you're thinking, don't. We get out of this together. All of us. That's the mission now. Not just the daughter. All of us walking out that door. You're a good man, Commander. She said it gently. The ocean should have killed me, and instead it dropped me in front of the one good man in 1,000 miles. That's a strange kind of luck. She checked the rifle, her hands moving with practiced certainty in the dark. But listen to me. If it comes to it, if the only way everyone else walks out is that I don't, you let me make that choice. Do you understand? You don't get to be noble about it. You don't get to trade your daughter's father for my life. I've got 17 deaths on my conscience and 23 years of being someone else's finger on the trigger. If I get to spend what's left of me buying 6 innocent people away out of this building, that's not a tragedy, Commander. Her voice was steady and clear. That's the closest thing to redemption a person like me is ever going to get. Before Callahan could answer, a sound came from the darkness at the end of the corridor. Not boots this time. Something softer, deliberate. The unhurried footsteps of a man who was in absolutely no hurry because he had never once in his entire life been afraid of what waited around the corner. Evelyn. Marcus Vale's voice no longer on the intercom, but real and close and human, drifting out of the dark hallway. I know you can hear me. I know you're kneeling there with the rifle up and your breathing slowed and your heart rate under 50. I taught you that. I taught you well of it. The footsteps stopped just around the corner, close enough now that he didn't need to raise his voice. Come now. You don't want these people to see what you really are. You've been playing hero for them, the brave survivor, the truth teller. But I know what's underneath, Evelyn. I built what's underneath, and it isn't a hero. It's the most efficient killing machine that this country ever produced. A pause. Do you really want the good commander to watch you become that again? Do you want that pilot's last memory of you to be the monster instead of the martyr? Evelyn's hands were perfectly steady on the rifle, but Callahan, kneeling beside her, saw the single tear that ran down her face and dropped silently to the floor. He's trying to make you doubt yourself, Callahan whispered. Don't let him. You're not what he made you. You proved that when you didn't take the shot. You proved it when you crossed an ocean to tell the truth. You proved it 30 seconds ago when you offered to die for 6 people you met an hour ago. That's not a machine, Evelyn. Machines don't do that. He's lying to you the same way he's lied to you your whole life. She closed her eyes for 1 second. Just one. And when she opened them, the tear was gone and something had settled in her face, something final and calm and unbreakable. Marcus, she called out into the dark, and her voice was steady as stone. You're right about one thing. You did build what's underneath. You spent 23 years making me into the perfect instrument. And I want you to know, before this is over, that you succeeded. You made me better than you. Better than any of them. She raised the rifle a fraction. But here's the thing you never understood, the thing that's about to cost you everything. You taught me to hit any target, any distance, any conditions. You made me the best shot who ever lived. Her fingers settled onto the trigger. You just never once stopped to think about what would happen the day I finally got to choose the target myself. For a moment, there was only silence in the dark corridor. And then Marcus Vale, for the first time in 23 years, made a mistake. He laughed, a low, confident, dismissive laugh, the laugh of a man who had never once been beaten by the weapon he'd built. You won't shoot me, Evelyn, he said. You can't. I'm the closest thing to a father you ever had. It's in you. The loyalty, the conditioning. It goes down to the bone. You could no more pull that trigger on me than you could stop your own heart. I made sure of it. It's the deepest thing in you, deeper than the training, deeper than the guilt. You will not shoot me. You are incapable of it. He stepped around the corner into the dim red light, empty hands raised, smiling, so certain, so absolutely certain. Now put down the rifle and let's go home. And Evelyn Carter looked at the man who had stolen her childhood, who had turned her into a weapon, who had taught her to feel nothing and then thrown her into a freezing ocean to Dayton when she finally felt something. You were the closest thing to a father I ever had, she said quietly, and that's exactly why. The rifle spoke. The rifle spoke, and Marcus Vale staggered back a step, and the smile on his face did not fade so much as freeze, as if his body had understood what happened before his mind could accept it. He looked down at his own shoulder at the spreading dark stain, and then back up at Evelyn with an expression Callahan would remember for the rest of his life. It wasn't pain, it was astonishment. The pure, disbelieving astonishment of a man discovering that the one thing in the universe he'd been certain of was wrong. You, Vale breathed, you shot me. In the shoulder, Evelyn said, her voice flat and cold. The same shoulder you made me practice on for 1,000 hours, on 100 targets, until I could put a round through a shoulder from a mile out in a crosswind. You taught me that shot, Marcus. I just gave it back to you. She kept the rifle trained on him, her breathing slow and even. I could have put it through your eye. You know I could have. I chose not to. Do you understand what that means? For the first time in my life, I chose. Not the conditioning, not you, me. Vale went down to one knee, his hand pressed to his shoulder, and even wounded, even shocked. Callahan could see the mind still working behind his eyes, still calculating, still looking for the angle. Men like Vale didn't stop being dangerous just because they were bleeding. Commander, Evelyn said without turning, he's got a weapon at the small of his back. He always carries one there. Have your man take it, slowly, and do not under any circumstances get between him and my rifle. Voss moved in, careful and professional, and relieved Vale of a compact pistol tucked exactly where Evelyn had said it would be. Vale didn't resist. He just knelt there in the red light, bleeding, and stared at Evelyn with that same terrible astonishment, as if she were a puzzle he'd solved 1,000 times that had suddenly impossibly changed its answer. How, he said, how did you break it? The conditioning. I built it into you before you were 7 years old. It's woven through everything you are. There is no version of you that shoots me. I ran the models. I ran them for years. There is no path where you pull that trigger. You ran the models on the girl you made, Evelyn said. You never ran them on the woman I became when you weren't looking, because you never believed she existed. She finally allowed herself to look at him fully, and her voice dropped quieter now, almost gentle, and somehow that made it worse. You want to know what broke it, Marcus? A man who burned his children's eggs every morning. Dr. Aaron Feld. I sat in a scope for 3 weeks watching him love 2 kids he was terrible at cooking for. And somewhere in those 3 weeks, the thing you built in me finally cracked, and something else grew up through the crack. Something you couldn't program. Something you spent my whole life trying to kill. She swallowed. You made me watch that man so I'd learn to kill without hesitation. Instead, I learned that I'd been the monster in someone else's scope my whole life, and I decided I didn't want to be that anymore. The corridor was silent except for Vale's ragged breathing and the distant hum of the emergency systems. And then from somewhere down in the utility level below them, there came a sound, a metallic clang, the access panel. Holloway spun toward it, his weapon coming up. The panel, ma'am, the panel just... I heard it. Evelyn was already recalculating, her mind moving through the geometry of the building. Vale didn't come alone. He never comes alone. He was the distraction this time. He walked in the front to hold my attention while the real element came up through the utilities. He used himself as bait. A bitter breath. He taught me that too. Sacrifice the piece your opponent least expects you to sacrifice. Vale, kneeling and bleeding, actually smiled. You always were my best student, Evelyn. Even now. Even shooting me, you understand exactly what I did and why. That's the tragedy of you. You'll never be free of me. Even when you win using everything I put in you. I'm in every breath you take, every shot you make. You can put a bullet in me, but you can never cut me out. I'm the architecture, Evelyn. You're just the building I made. For one terrible second, Callahan saw the words land on her, saw doubt flicker across her face, saw the old handler's poison reach for the deepest part of her. And Callahan understood with sudden clarity that this was Vale's real weapon, that the man wasn't fighting to survive, or at all, that he was fighting to hollow her out from the inside to make her win, feel like a loss, to make her freedom feel like just another kind of cage. Don't listen to him, Callahan said, low and fierce. Evelyn, look at me, not him, me. She turned her head a fraction and he held her eyes. A carpenter builds a house. That doesn't make him the family that lives in it. He built the walls. He doesn't get to say who you are inside them. What you did in that scope, choosing not to shoot Feld, choosing to cross an ocean, choosing to point that rifle at the man who deserves it instead of the man who didn't. That's not his architecture. That's you. That's the person you built in secret in the one place he couldn't reach. And she's real. She's kneeling right here holding a rifle, and she just saved my life and every life in this building, and there is nothing of Marcus Vale in that. Evelyn's eyes cleared. The doubt broke and fell away, and she looked back at Vale, and when she spoke, her voice had a certainty in it that hadn't been there before. He's right, she said. You built the walls, Marcus, but you never once lived in the house. You don't get to tell me what it's like in that. She keyed the reality of the moment back into focus. Holloway, that panel. How many? Holloway's voice shook. I don't know. I can't see down there. It's dark. I hear movement more than one. Then we don't wait for them to come up. Evelyn was already moving, and it was extraordinary to watch the way she reorganized the entire defense in the space of 3 seconds. Voss, keep your weapon on Vale. If he so much as shifts his weight, you put him down and don't feel bad about it, he'd do the same to you without blinking. Commander, I need you and the security team to fall back to the secure room where your specialist is. That's a hard point. One door reinforced. It's where Reyes is with the data. Everyone consolidates there. Now. What about you? Callahan demanded. I'm going to hold this junction while you move, she said, sighting down the corridor toward the access panel. One person in a good position can hold a choke point against a much larger force. That's the entire history of warfare, Commander. Thermopylae, the narrow place. You put the right person in the narrow place and numbers stop mattering. She glanced at him. I'm the right person. I'm the most right person who has ever existed for exactly this. Let me do it. I'm not leaving you alone in this hallway. You're not leaving me. You're giving me a whoa. Her voice was steady, and there was something almost peaceful in it now. You spent your whole career pulling people out of the water, Commander. You couldn't stand to leave a body in the sea. I understand that. But right now, the way you save the most people is to trust me to do the one thing I'm good at and get everyone else to safety. Let me be good at something that saves lives for once, just once. Let that be the last thing this rifle does. The access panel scraped again louder now, and a hand appeared at its edge. Evelyn fired, and the hand vanished, and a curse echoed up from the darkness below. Go, she barked. Commander, move them. Now I can't hold this and worry about you at the same time. Callahan hesitated for one more second, the instinct to stay warring with the understanding that she was right, that the tactical truth was exactly what she said. And then he made the hardest kind of decision, the kind that goes against every fiber of who you are, because it's the only way to save the most lives. Fall back to the secure room, he ordered. Everybody, now, Voss, bring Vale. He's our prisoner, and our leverage, do not lose him. He looked at Evelyn one last time. This is not you dying in this hallway. Do you hear me? You hold this junction, we consolidate, and then I come back for you. That's the deal. I don't leave bodies in the water, and I don't leave people in hallways. I'm coming back. For just a moment, something soft crossed Evelyn Carter's ravaged face. You know, she said, not taking her eye off the panel. In 23 years, nobody ever came back for me. Not once. I didn't even know it was a thing people did. She almost smiled. Go on, Commander. I'll hold the door. Come back if you can. And if you can't get the truth to Brussels, that's the mission. The truth is the mission. I'm just the delivery. They moved. Voss hauled the wounded Vale to his feet and marched him back down the corridor, the security team forming up around them, Holloway covering the rear. And Callahan went with them, every step feeling like a betrayal, glancing back at the lone figure, kneeling at the junction, the woman the ocean couldn't kill, holding the narrow place against the dark. Behind them, the corridor erupted. The utility team came up through the panel in a rush, and Evelyn Carter met them with the calm, methodical, devastating skill of the most precisely engineered marksman in human history. Callahan heard the measured cracks of the rifle, spaced and deliberate, each one a decision, each one a life, and he heard the shouts and the return fire and the sounds of professionals dying in a hallway against a woman who should have died in the ocean 3 days ago. They reached the secure room. Reyes yanked the reinforced door open, wild-eyed, and pulled them in. Sir, thank God I didn't know if the power came back on the backup circuit 30 seconds ago. I've got partial systems, and sir, listen, he was almost incoherent with adrenaline. It went through before Vale cut the main power. The data, it went through. Douglas Haynes in Brussels, his office confirmed receipt, all 17 kill logs, all the evidence in the lock vault. The whole encrypted blob, it's in his hands right now. It's out. It's really out. They can't stop it anymore. Even if they kill every one of us in this building, it's already out. Callahan felt something unclench in his chest, a knot he'd been carrying since the moment Voss said the word person over the North Atlantic. It's out, he repeated. It's really out. It's out, sir. Harold Stennett is finished. He just doesn't know it yet. And then Vale slumped against the wall with his bleeding shoulder, began to laugh again. A wet, pained, awful laugh. You think that's the mission, he said. You think this was ever about the 17 kills? The evidence. Stennett. He shook his head and blood flecked his lips. You have no idea what you've done. You have no idea what's in that vault. You sent it to Brussels. You put the locked vault in the hands of a prosecutor. And there's only one key on earth that opens it. His eyes found Callahan's, and there was something in them that turned the commander's blood to ice, a terrible, gloating knowledge. You just told every enemy, Evelyn Carter, he had ever had exactly where the key is going. You didn't protect her, Commander. You painted the biggest target in the world on her back, because now whoever wants what's in that vault, they don't need to find the data anymore. He smiled through the blood. They just need to find her and take her alive to Brussels and make her open it. The room went silent, and down the corridor the sound of Evelyn's rifle had stopped. Callahan's heart lurched. Reyes cameras, give me eyes on that junction. Now! Reyes's fingers flew over the keys. The screen flickered, caught resolved, and the corridor came into view in grainy red light. The junction was littered with the men who'd come up through the panel, 4 of them down unmoving. Evelyn's work precise and total, but Evelyn Carter was gone. Her rifle lay on the floor at the center of the junction, abandoned, which she would never have done, which she would sooner have died than done. And on the wall above it, smeared in something dark, someone had left 3 numbers, hastily drawn a message meant to be found. Callahan stared at them, uncomprehending. What is that? Reyes, zoom in. What does that say? Reyes zoomed. The numbers resolved, and Vale against the wall began to laugh harder until the laugh turned into a cough, and the cough brought up more blood. 4, 1, 1, 2, Vale wheezed. 4,112. They left you the range, Commander. It's a message. It's Stennett's people telling you they have her, and they know exactly what she is, and they know exactly what she can open. He grinned, red-toothed and triumphant. They took the key, and now they're going to Brussels to open the vault. And there's not a thing in the world you can do to stop them. Because the one person who could stop them, the best there ever was, is riding in the back of a van with a bag over her head on her way to unlock the worst thing this country ever made. Callahan looked at the abandoned rifle on the screen, at the smeared numbers on the wall, at the empty junction, where the woman who'd saved all their lives had made her stand, and at the very end, been taken. Not because she lost, but because she'd spent her last rounds making sure the corridor behind her stayed clear, making sure the door she promised to hold held. She'd held it. She'd held the door for all of them. And in holding it, she'd had nothing left to hold herself. Callahan picked up his radio, and his voice when it came was very quiet and very hard. Reyes, he said, get me Douglas Haynes in Brussels, direct line, right now, because they're bringing him a key, and he needs to know it's coming, and he needs to know that the woman carrying it is the bravest person I have ever met. And we are not going to let them use her and throw her away like everyone else in her life has done. He set the radio down and looked at the numbers on the wall one more time. 4,112 meters. That's how far she took her impossible shot. That's how far I'll go to get her back. Douglas Haynes's voice came through the line, thin and crackling. A man 3,000 miles away being woken in the middle of the night to news he'd been chasing his entire career. Say that again, Commander. Slowly. You're telling me the ballistic vault is real, and you're telling me the key is a person. The key is a woman named Evelyn Carter, Callahan said, gripping the radio so hard his knuckles ached. And Stennett's people just took her. They're bringing her to you, Mr. Haynes. Not to help you, to force her to open that vault under their control, extract whatever's in it that they need, and then dispose of both her and the evidence. You have the locked file, they have the key, and they are coming to your city to make those 2 things meet on their terms, not yours. There was a long silence on the line. When Haynes spoke again, his voice had changed, hardened into the voice of a man who had spent 15 years building a case against the most protected criminal he'd ever encountered, and had just been told the final piece was walking into his jurisdiction in the trunk of a car. I've been after Harold Stennett since I was a junior prosecutor, Haynes said. I have watched him by judges. I have watched witnesses recant, disappear, die in accidents that weren't accidents. I had a colleague, a good man, who got close once. They found him in his garage with the engine running and a note that wasn't in his handwriting. A pause. If what you're telling me is true, if there's a woman who can open a vault that documents every operation Stennett ever ran, then she is the single most important witness in the history of my career. And you're telling me she's already been captured? She has, but she's alive. That's the one thing we know for certain. They need her alive because a dead key opens nothing. As long as that vault stays locked, Evelyn Carter is worth more to them breathing than dead. Callahan looked at Vale, slumped and bleeding and smiling against the wall. Their whole plan depends on keeping her alive long enough to make her cooperate, which means we have time, not much, but some. How much? Get forward. That depends on how they plan to move her. And I've got someone right here who might know. Callahan crossed the room and crouched down in front of Marcus Vale and looked into the eyes of the man who had built Evelyn Carter and thrown her away. You're going to tell me how they're moving her. Vale laughed, a wet rasp. Or what, commander? You'll hurt me. I've been trained to withstand things that would make you weep. Pain doesn't work on me. I'm a locked door too, just like the vault. And you don't have my key either. I'm not going to hurt you, Callahan said. And he meant it, and something about the flat certainty in his voice made Vale's smile falter for the first time. I'm going to tell you the truth, and then I'm going to let you sit with it. You spent your whole life making that woman into a weapon. You told yourself you were serving your country, that the ends justified it, that taking children and burning the souls out of them was a price worth paying for national security. Callahan leaned closer, and then Stennett turned her against innocent people, journalists, academics, a man who burned eggs for his kids. And you knew the mission had gone rotten. And you did nothing. You kept building weapons and pointing them wherever Stennett said because it was easier than admitting you'd wasted your entire life serving a monster who was just using you the same way you used her. Vale's face had gone very still. Here's the truth I want you to sit with, Callahan said quietly. Evelyn Carter is more of a human being than you will ever be. She figured out in a scope in 3 weeks the thing you couldn't figure out in 23 years. That there's a line, that some orders you don't follow no matter what they've done to you. She crossed an ocean to tell the truth. And you put a bag over her head and handed her to the men who threw her in the sea. So don't tell me about locked doors, Marcus. She's the one with something worth protecting behind hers. You're just an empty room. For a long moment, Vale said nothing. And Callahan watched something happen behind the older man's eyes, some crack he'd never expected to see, because he'd struck at the one thing Vale had never been willing to look at directly, the possibility that his entire life had been a waste in service of a lie. There's a private airfield, Vale said finally very quietly. Outside the city, Stennett keeps unregistered aircraft there. If they took Evelyn, that's where they'll process her before Brussels. They'll want to break her first before they let her near the vault. Get her compliant. Because a marksman who takes an impossible shot isn't just aiming a rifle. She's making 1,000 micro decisions with her hands. If she wanted to, she could deliberately miss the ballistic signature. Fail the shot. Keep the vault locked forever. He looked up. They know that, so they won't just point her at the vault. They'll find her leverage first. Something she can't bear to lose. And then they'll make her open it to save it. What leverage? Callahan said. She has no one. That was the whole point of your program. You took orphans specifically so there'd be no one to threaten. Vale was quiet. And then slowly, terribly, he said, that's not entirely true anymore. Is it, Commander? His eyes flicked to Callahan's face, and there was something almost like pity in them. She has someone now. She has a room full of someones. She has a pilot who came back for her. She said it herself in that hallway. Nobody ever came back for her. And then you did. And Stennett's people were listening to every word on the intercom before I cut the power. Vale's voice dropped. You want to know what leverage they'll use to make Evelyn Carter open that vault? It's you. It's your crew. It's everyone in this building she decided to care about. They'll tell her that if she doesn't open the vault, they'll kill the first people who ever came back for her, and she will open it because you gave her something to lose, Commander. And in this world, the only thing more dangerous than having nothing to lose is finally having something. The room was silent. Callahan felt the full weight of it land on him, the terrible irony that in giving Evelyn the one thing she'd never had in coming back for her, in refusing to leave a body in the water, he had handed her captors the exact weapon they needed. Then we don't give them time to use it, Callahan said, standing. Reyes, that airfield. Vale, give him the location. Reyes cross-referenced it with everything flight plans, satellite, whatever you can pull. Haynes, are you still on the line? I'm here. Haynes' voice was tight. Commander, I have to be honest with you about the position we're in. Officially, I can't move on any of this. The moment I go through official channels, Stennett will know because Stennett owns people in every official channel there is. That's why I've never been able to touch him. Every warrant I've ever tried to serve, he knew about before the ink was dry. A breath. But unofficially, there are a few people I trust. A very few. People who've lost the same things to Stennett that I have. If I make some calls, I might be able to have someone waiting when that aircraft lands in Brussels. Not an army, not the cavalry, just a handful of people who hate Harold Stennett as much as I do and don't care about their careers anymore. That might be all we need, Callahan said. Because if I know Evelyn Carter, and I'm starting to think I do, she's not going to open that vault quietly. She's going to make them fight for every second. She's the best there ever was, Mr. Haynes. Even captured, even with a bag over her head, she's going to be looking for the crack. We just have to be ready to help her through it when she finds it. At that moment, Reyes made a sharp intake of breath. Sir, I've got something. The airfield Vale gave me. I pulled the satellite pass and there's an aircraft on the ground, engines hot. And sir, there's a vehicle that just arrived, matches the description and the timing. It's them. It has to be them. They're loading now. His voice cracked. Sir, they're going to be wheels up in minutes if they get airborne. They're in international airspace, and we lose them until Brussels. Callahan's mind raced. How far is that airfield from us? 40 minutes by road. But sir, we can't get anyone there in... How far by air? Reyes stopped, and Voss, standing by the door, slowly turned to look at Callahan, and understanding dawned on the old radar operator's weathered face. Commander, Voss said, the helicopter. The helicopter, Callahan agreed. It's fueled. It's on the pad, and I've been flying that airframe for 6 years. Sir. Holloway stepped forward. That's a rescue helicopter. It's not armed. It's not fast. If we go up against a jet full of Stennett's professionals, we've got no weapons and we've got the one thing they don't expect, Callahan said. They think they've won. They think they've got the key, and there's nothing standing between them and Brussels. They are not looking over their shoulder for an unarmed rescue helicopter flown by the pilot who pulled Evelyn Carter out of the ocean. Surprise is a weapon, Holloway. Vale said so himself. You sacrifice the piece your opponent least expects. Well, an unarmed helicopter is the last thing they'll be watching for. He was already moving toward the door. Reyes, you stay here. You keep that data safe, you keep the line to Haynes open, and you coordinate everything from the ground. Voss, Holloway, you're with me. Anyone who wants to volunteer this is not an order. This is a choice because it's likely a one-way trip. There was no hesitation. Every man in the room stepped forward. Callahan looked at them, this ragged crew of rescue men and radar operators, and one terrified, brilliant technician, none of them soldiers, none of them trained for this. All of them ready to fly an unarmed aircraft into the teeth of a professional kill network because a woman they'd known for a few hours had held a doorway so they could live. She held the door for us, Callahan said quietly. Now we hold it for her. They ran for the pad. Behind them, Marcus Vale called out, and there was something strange in his voice, something that hadn't been there before, something almost like a plea. Commander. Callahan stopped. Vale looked up at him from where he sat, bleeding against the wall. When you find her, when you find Evelyn, he swallowed. Tell her something for me. Tell her I was wrong. Tell her the person she became, the one I couldn't see coming, the one who chose not to take the shot, the one who chose to come back and hold a door for strangers. His voice broke just slightly, the first fully human sound Callahan had heard him make. Tell her that person is better than anything I ever built. Tell her I spent 23 years trying to make a perfect weapon, and I failed because she became something I could never have made. She became good. And tell her that in the end, the old man who stole her childhood was proud of the one thing about her he never programmed and never understood. He looked away. Now go. Go get her back. And when this is over, I'll testify. Against Stennett, against all of it, against myself. It's the only thing I have left to give her, and it's 23 years too late, but I'll give it. Callahan looked at the broken old man for one long moment, and then he nodded once and he ran. The helicopter roared to life under his hands, familiar as his own heartbeat, and they lifted off the pad into the Arctic dark and swung out toward the airfield where Evelyn Carter was being loaded onto a plane that would carry her to the worst thing anyone had ever built. Callahan pushed the airframe harder than he ever had, the engines screaming the coast unspooling black beneath them. "Reyes," he said into the radio, "talk to me. Are they still on the ground?" "Barely, sir. They're taxiing. They're lining up for departure. Sir, you're not going to make it. They're going to be airborne before you. Then I'll catch them in the air." "Sir, you can't. A helicopter can't intercept a jet. The physics don't." "I'm not going to race it, Reyes. I'm going to get in its way." Callahan's jaw was set. They have to take off into the wind. That means they have to line up on that one runway in that one direction and roll a long way before they can rotate. And for those few seconds, they're on a fixed line, low and slow and committed. And I'm going to put this helicopter down on that runway in front of them and make them choose. Abort or crash. And professionals don't crash a plane full of the leverage they need. They'll abort. And when they abort, they're on the ground. And when they're on the ground, we have a chance. Voss stared at him. "Commander, you're going to land a helicopter in front of a departing jet. On purpose." "I've spent my whole life putting this aircraft exactly where it shouldn't be able to go," Callahan said. "Over waves that would swallow a ship. In storms that ground everyone else. I put it wherever the person who needs saving is." His hands were steady on the controls. "Evelyn Carter needs saving. She's on that runway. So that's where I'm putting the helicopter." The airfield came into view. A scatter of lights in the black. And there on the runway was the jet engines spooling up, beginning its roll. Callahan pushed the helicopter into a screaming dive. "There," Holloway shouted. "Sir, I can see it. It's moving. It's starting its takeoff run." "Hold on," Callahan said. "Everybody hold on. This is going to be close." He brought the helicopter down out of the sky like a hammer straight for the runway ahead of the accelerating jet, and for a few seconds that felt like hours. The two aircraft rushed toward the same point of ground, the jet gathering speed, the helicopter dropping like a stone, and Callahan committed everything, every hour of every year he'd spent learning to put an aircraft in impossible places into that one descent. The jet's pilots saw him. Callahan knew they saw him because he saw the nose dip, saw the professionals in the cockpit make the calculation, saw them do the only thing they could do, which was chop the throttles and stand on the brakes and abort the jet, screaming and shuddering as it fought to stop before it reached the helicopter, now settling onto the runway directly in its path. The jet stopped, 50 feet away, engines howling, and for one frozen moment, the two aircraft faced each other on the dark runway, and nobody moved. Then the jet's door opened, and armed men began to spill out, and Callahan's radio crackled with a voice he'd heard only once before on the intercom, but would never forget, smooth and cold and without warmth. "Commander Callahan." It wasn't Vale. Vale was bleeding in the medical station. This was someone else, someone new. And Callahan understood with a lurch that this was the man at the top, the voice that had given every order, the man himself. "Harold Stennett, you've been remarkably persistent. I'll admit I didn't account for you. A rescue pilot with a conscience. Rare. Inconvenient. But rare." A pause. "I have something you want in this aircraft. And you have something I want up, which is to walk away from this alive, you and your little crew of heroes. So let's make a deal before anyone else has to die tonight." And then a second voice came on, faint in the background, but unmistakable, ragged and defiant and alive, shouting over the howl of the engines so that Callahan would hear it. Commander Evelyn Carter's voice. "Don't you dare make a deal with him. Don't you dare. He's going to kill us all. Anyway, you know he is. Get out of here. Get the truth to Brussels. That's the mission. I'm not worth it. I was never worth it." There was a sound like a blow and her voice cut off. And Callahan, sitting in the cockpit of an unarmed helicopter 50 feet from the man who had built and destroyed and stolen Evelyn Carter, felt something rise up in him that was colder and harder and more certain than anything he had ever felt in his life. "Mr. Stennett," he said into the radio, and his voice was very quiet and very calm. "You just made a mistake. You told me she's worth something to you alive, which means she's leverage, and leverage only works if I believe you'll actually give her back. But I heard what she said, and she's right. You're going to kill us all anyway. So there's no deal to make. There's just this." He looked out at the armed men fanning across the runway at the jet, at the whole apparatus of a man who had never once in his life been told no by someone he couldn't destroy. I pulled that woman out of an ocean that should have killed her, and I am not going to let you put her back in the dark. You want to know what I'm willing to do to stop you?" His hand moved on the controls. "You have no idea, because I'm the pilot who came back, and she's the reason. And people who come back don't stop. Not for you, not for anyone." Harold Stennett's voice returned, and for the first time there was the faintest thread of something other than cold amusement in it. Irritation. The irritation of a man who had spent his entire life removing obstacles and had just encountered one that wouldn't move. "You're a fool, Commander. A brave one, I'll grant you. But bravery is just a slower way of dying when you're outmatched. I have 12 armed professionals on this runway. You have an unarmed helicopter and 3 men? A radar operator and a swimmer. Do the arithmetic. There's no version of this where you win. There's only a version where you die usefully and a version where you die pointlessly. I'm offering you useful." "You keep talking about arithmetic," Callahan said. He kept his voice level, kept the rotor turning, kept his eyes moving across the runway. "You know who else talked about arithmetic? Your man, Vale. He kept telling Evelyn there was no path where she beat him. He ran the models. He was certain. And you know what she did? A beat. She shot him, right through the shoulder he trained her to hit. Turns out your arithmetic has a blind spot, Mr. Stennett. It's the same blind spot every man like you has. You can't calculate for someone who's decided they'd rather do the right thing and lose than do the wrong thing and win. That variable doesn't fit in your equations. It never has." There was a silence on the line, and in that silence, Callahan spoke fast and low to his crew off the radio. "Voss, when I say go, I want you to hit the searchlights. All of them, full power straight at that jet's cockpit. Blind the pilots and blind those men on the runway for 3 seconds. Holloway, the second the lights come on, you're going out the door on the far side low, and you're going to work your way around behind them in the dark. They'll be looking at the lights. They won't be looking at the shadows." "Sir," Holloway breathed, "there's 12 of them." "There's 12 of them looking at a helicopter," Callahan said. "There's 0 of them looking for one man in the dark. Vale told us the trick himself. Sacrifice the piece they least expect, the helicopters, the piece they're watching. You're the piece they're not." He gripped the controls. "And I need you to reach that jet. Because Evelyn's in there, and if we can get her out, if we can get the key away from the lock, then Stennett's whole night falls apart. Can you do it?" Holloway swallowed hard, and then something settled in the young swimmer's face, the same thing Callahan had seen settle in Evelyn's before she took her stand at the junction. "She held the door for us," Holloway said. "Yeah, I can do it." "Good man." Callahan had keyed the radio again, loud buying time, keeping Stennett's attention where he wanted it. "Mr. Stennett, before I decide anything, I want proof she's alive. Real proof. Put her on the radio. Let me hear her voice. Because I'm not making any deal for a corpse." A pause, then Stennett, amused again, indulgent. "You want to hear her voice? How sentimental. Fine, it cost me nothing." A rustle, a scrape, and then Evelyn's voice came through closer now, breathing hard but controlled. "Commander?" Her voice was steady, and Callahan could hear her doing the thing she always did, the calm settling over her like armor. "I'm alive, but listen to me. Whatever he's told you, whatever deal he's dangling, it's a lie, and you know it's a lie, and I need you to be smart, not brave. There are 12 of them. I've counted, 6 on the runway, 2 on each wing, 2 still in the cabin with me. The pilots are the weak point. They're not operators. They're just flyers. They'll break first if things go loud." She was feeding him tactical information right under Stennett's nose, calm and precise. The most dangerous marksman in the world doing the only thing she could do with her hands bound, which was think. "And Commander, the vault. Whatever happens to me, do not let them open the vault on their terms. If it comes to it, if there's no other way, you let me fail the shot. You let me keep it locked forever, even if it costs me. Do you understand? The vault stays locked before it opens for them. That's the mission. That's always been the mission." "I understand," Callahan said, and then quietly, "But there's a third option, Evelyn, the one you keep forgetting exists, the one where I come back for you. Are you ready?" There was the briefest pause, and then Evelyn Carter, who had never once in her life had someone offer her a third option, said in a voice that cracked just slightly, "Ready." "Go," Callahan said. The searchlights blazed to life, all of them at once. A wall of white light aimed straight into the cockpit of the jet, and across the eyes of the men on the runway, and the whole scene dissolved into shouting and confusion. Callahan saw the operators throw their arms up, saw the jet's pilots recoil from the glare, and in the chaos and the light, Holloway went out the far door of the helicopter and vanished into the dark, like a man diving into black water, which was, after all, the thing he'd trained his whole life to do. "He's out," Voss reported. "He's clear. They didn't see him. Keep the lights on them. Keep them blind." Callahan's hands were dancing on the controls, keeping the helicopter alive, keeping Stennett's attention nailed to the front. On the radio, Stennett was shouting now, the smooth calm gone, ordering his men to kill the lights, to fire on the helicopter, to stop wasting time. "Commander," Stennett's voice furious now, "whatever you think you're doing, it ends now. My men have orders to fire. You have 5 seconds to cut those lights and stand down, or I paint that runway with all 4 of you." "Then fire," Callahan said. "But know this, the moment your men open up on a lit helicopter, on a runway, every satellite and every airfield sensor in this region logs it. You've built your whole empire on nothing being visible, Mr. Stennett, on no evidence, on deniability. And I've just turned your quiet little extraction into the most visible event in the North Atlantic tonight. Douglas Haynes in Brussels is watching the feed right now, so go ahead, fire, and add it to the vault." It was a bluff mostly, but it was the kind of bluff that worked on a man like Stennett because it struck at the one thing he actually feared, which was not death but exposure. And Callahan heard the hesitation in the silence that followed, heard the machine of Stennett's mind grind against the possibility that the pilot was right. And in that hesitation, Holloway reached the jet. Callahan never saw exactly what happened next. He only heard it through the open channel, through Evelyn's voice that suddenly changed. That went from prisoner to predator in the space of a heartbeat. Because Holloway, coming up under the wing in the dark, had done the one thing he could do, which was reach the cabin door and yank it open and give Evelyn Carter, with her hands bound, and 2 operators beside her, exactly the 1 second of chaos she needed. "Down!" Evelyn's voice roared through the radio, and then came sounds that Callahan would never forget, the sounds of a woman who had been built into the most efficient close-quarters combatant in the world, discovering that her captors had made the fatal error of underestimating what she could do, even bound, even outnumbered, even exhausted. There was shouting and impacts in a single gunshot, and then Evelyn's voice, again ragged and triumphant. "Cabin's clear. Holloway, cut me loose. Cut me loose. We're moving." "They're loose," Holloway shouted over the channel. "Sir, she's loose. We're coming out the far side. We need cover. We need—" "Voss, swing the lights," Callahan barked. "Give them the dark to run through, blind everything between the jet and us." The searchlights swung and the runway became a chaos of shadow and glare, and through it, Callahan saw 2 figures break from the jet and sprint low across the tarmac toward the helicopter. One of them moving with a speed and economy that even now, even after everything, was breathtaking to watch. Stennett's men opened fire. Rounds sparked off the runway. And Callahan did the only thing he could do, which was drop the helicopter down between the shooters and the running figures, putting the whole armored belly of the aircraft in the line of fire, using the thing he'd spent his life saving people with as a shield. "They're firing on the aircraft," Voss shouted. "Sir, we're taking hits. The airframe can't—" "Hold it together, Voss. Just a few more seconds. They're almost here." Evelyn and Holloway reached the door. Holloway went up first, then turned and hauled Evelyn in behind him, and the moment her feet cleared the runway, Callahan pulled pitch, and the helicopter clawed up into the dark rounds, still hammering, the fuselage, the engines screaming in protest. And then they were up and climbing, and the airfield fell away beneath them, and Harold Stennett's voice came one last time over the radio, no longer smooth, no longer calm, stripped down to pure fury. "You have no idea what you've done, Callahan. That vault, you think you've saved her? You think this is over. There is nowhere on this earth you can hide her that I can't reach. I own the ground you'll land on." Callahan reached over and switched off the radio. In the cabin behind him, Evelyn Carter sat on the floor, her wrists raw where the bindings had been, her chest heaving, and she looked up at Callahan in the cockpit with an expression he had never seen on her face before in all the hours he'd known her. It wasn't the engineered calm. It wasn't the grief. It was something raw and stunned and disbelieving. "You came back," she said. Her voice was barely audible over the rotor. "You actually came back." "I told you I would," Callahan said, not turning, keeping his hands on the controls, keeping them alive. "I don't leave bodies in the water. and I don't leave people on runways. Nobody comes back, she said, and now her voice broke completely, 23 years of it breaking all at once. In my whole life, nobody has ever, they teach you not to expect it. They teach you that you're alone, that you're always alone, that the mission is the only thing. And I believed it. I believed it for 23 years. And then a pilot I met yesterday flew an unarmed helicopter into a runway full of guns because she couldn't finish. Because you held the door for us, Holloway said quietly from where he sat beside her, still catching his breath. You held the door, ma'am. We were just returning the favor. Evelyn Carter put her raw and bleeding hands over her face, and for the first time since a helicopter had found her face down in the frozen ocean, the most dangerous woman in the world let herself cry. Not from pain, not from fear, but from the impossible, unfamiliar weight of being someone worth coming back for. Callahan turned the helicopter toward the coast, toward the base, toward Reyes and the data, and the line to Brussels, and he let her cry, because some things a person has to do, and being wanted after a lifetime of being used is one of them. And when she finally lowered her hands, her face was wet, but her eyes were clear, and something had changed in them, some last piece of the weapon falling away to leave only the person underneath. The vault, she said, it's still out there. Stennett still wants it open. He's not going to stop. You heard him. He owns the ground we land on. She wiped her face. This isn't over, Commander. We got me off that runway, but the reason they wanted me is still real. As long as that vault exists and I'm the only key, there is no safe place for any of us. Not for me, not for your crew, not for your daughter. She met his eyes. He knows about your daughter. I know, Callahan said quietly. Then you understand, there's only one way this ends. It doesn't end with us hiding. It ends with that vault open in the right hands, with everything inside it in front of the whole world, so that there's nothing left for Stennett to protect and no reason left to hunt me. She took a breath, which means I have to do the one thing I swore I'd never do again. I have to take the shot, the impossible one, 4,112 meters. I have to reproduce it live and let the module verify me and open that vault myself on our terms with Douglas Haynes watching so that it can never be opened on Stennett's terms. Her jaw tightened. One more shot, Commander. The hardest one there's ever been. And this time, for the first time in my life, it'll be a shot that saves people instead of ending them. Callahan looked back at her, at this woman the ocean couldn't kill, and Vale couldn't own, and Stennett couldn't break, and he understood that the story wasn't finished, that the frozen woman on the wreckage had one more impossible thing left to do. Then we'll get you your shot, he said, on our terms, in front of the world. And when it's done, Harold Stennett is going to learn what your handler learned tonight. He turned the helicopter into the wind. That the weapon he built finally got to choose her own target, and it's him. The plan came together in the gray hours before dawn, in the secure room where Reyes had barricaded himself with Douglas Haynes on the line from Brussels, and Marcus Vale bandaged now and strangely quiet, listening from the corner where they'd placed him under guard. It has to be done here, Evelyn said. She stood at the center of the room, no longer a patient, no longer a prisoner, but something else entirely, a soldier planning her last operation. Not in Brussels, not anywhere Stennett expects. He thinks the vault opens where the prosecutor is. That's where he'll concentrate everything. So we don't go there. We open it here remotely with Haynes watching by secure feed, and we transmit the contents the instant it unlocks. By the time Stennett realizes it happened, it'll already be done. Already public. Already beyond his reach. And to open it, Callahan said, you have to take the shot. I have to reproduce it exactly. Evelyn looked at the rifle which Holloway had recovered from the junction and which now lay on the table between them. The module has to watch me solve a shot at 4,112 meters under conditions matching the original and confirm the ballistic signature matches. It's not enough to hit a target. I have to hit it the way I hit it the first time. The exact same solution, which means I need the same rifle, the same range, and conditions I can shape to match. She turned to Reyes. The original shot, pull the environmental data, temperature, wind humidity, barometric pressure, everything the module logged the moment I took it. Reyes's fingers flew. Got it. Temperature was -4 Celsius. Wind was, this is complicated, sir. It's a layered wind crosswind at the shooter's position, but shifting direction at altitude across the flight path. Humidity 80%. and the elevation change of the target was significantly lower than the shooter. He looked up. Ma'am, these conditions are incredibly specific. The odds of them matching a place and time you can actually get to and set up in are, I don't need them to match by luck, Evelyn said. I need them close enough that I can correct for the difference. That's the entire skill. Nobody ever takes a shot in perfect conditions. You read the reality in front of you and you solve for it. The module doesn't need the weather to be identical. It needs my solution to produce the identical result. And that I can do. A faint, grim smile. That's the one thing in this world I know I can do. Haynes' voice came through the speaker. Commander Evelyn, I have to raise something and I need you both to hear it clearly. Even if this works, even if you open the vault and transmit the contents, Harold Stennett is not a man who accepts defeat. The moment that data goes public, he becomes the most desperate man alive. And a desperate Stennett is more dangerous than a confident one. He will not run. He will not hide. He will come for the person who did this to him, and he will not care about consequences anymore because he'll have nothing left to lose. A pause. Lynn, opening this vault paints a target on you that never comes off. You understand that? Evelyn was quiet for a moment. Mr. Haynes, she said, I've had a target on me since I was 6 years old. The only thing that's ever changed is who's holding the crosshairs. For 23 years, it was Vale and Stennett and men like them, and I was their weapon, and the target on my back was just the price of being useful. She looked around the room at Callahan, at Voss, at Holloway, at Reyes. For the first time, the target on my back is because I did something right. Because I'm about to put the truth in front of the world and free every other person that program ever made. If I have to carry a target for the rest of my life, let it be that one. Let it be the one I chose. She met Callahan's eyes. I'd rather be hunted for the truth than protected by a lie. I've had enough of lies to last me 100 lifetimes. Callahan nodded slowly. And then from the corner, Marcus Vale spoke and everyone turned because they'd almost forgotten he was there. There's a problem with your plan, Vale said. His voice was weak but clear. And I'm the only one in this room who knows what it is because I designed the vault. I designed the lock. He looked at Evelyn. You're right that it opens for your ballistic signature, but there's a fail-safe, a second condition. When I built it, I was afraid of exactly this scenario, an asset going rogue and opening the vault against us. So I added something. The module doesn't just verify the shot, it verifies the shooter's biometric state at the moment of the shot. Heart rate, stress response. It has to match the profile of an asset operating under mission conditions. He paused. Evelyn, when you took that shot the first time, you were what I made you. Cold, empty, heart rate under 50. No fear, no attachment, no hope. A perfect instrument. His eyes were sad. You're not that person anymore. You've changed. I can see it. Anyone can see it. And the moment you take that shot with a human heart in your chest, a heart that's learned to hope and fear and care, the module will read the mismatch and it will lock the vault permanently, forever, beyond any recovery. He looked away. I built it so that only the weapon could open it, never the woman. I made sure that the day you became a person was the day you lost the ability to unlock the truth. I'm sorry I didn't know when I built it that I was building a cage around your own redemption. The room went silent, and Callahan watched the impossible weight of it settle onto Evelyn's shoulders, the cruelest trap of all, the understanding that to open the vault, she'd have to become again, for one shot, the empty weapon she'd spent everything to stop being. So to save everyone, Evelyn said slowly, I have to become the thing I crossed an ocean to escape. I have to empty myself out, feel nothing, be the weapon one last time. Her voice was very quiet. And the terrible part is, I don't know if I can. I don't know if I can go back. I've felt too much now. I've cried in a helicopter. I've had someone come back for me. How do you unfeel that? How do you make your heart go back under 50 when you've finally learned what it's for? Nobody had an answer. And into that silence, Callahan stepped forward. Maybe you don't unfeel it, he said. Maybe that's the wrong way to think about it. He knelt down so he was level with her. Vale built the lock to open for an empty person, a person with no attachment, no hope, no reason to care whether the shot succeeds. But he was wrong about what that state is. He thought it was emptiness. He thought a person with nothing to lose was empty. Callahan shook his head. But you know that's not true. You told me yourself. The most dangerous thing isn't having nothing to lose. It's finally having something. The calm you had as a weapon wasn't emptiness, Evelyn. It was total focus. Everything else in the world falling away until there was only the shot. He held her eyes. You can get there again. Not by becoming empty, by becoming so full of purpose that nothing else exists. By caring so much about what this shot saves that everything else, the fear, the hope, even the pain, all of it goes quiet. That's not the weapon. That's you at your absolute best doing the most important thing you've ever done. He took a breath. Your heart won't go under 50 because you feel nothing. It'll go under 50 because for once in your life, you're completely at peace with what you're about to do. Because it's right. Because it's yours. Evelyn Carter looked at him for a long, long time, and something moved through her face, some understanding, some settling. You really think that'll work, she whispered. I think, Callahan said, that Marcus Vail spent 23 years being an expert on the weapon he built, and about 10 hours being wrong about the person you became. I'll bet on the person. They set up at dawn. The range was a stretch of frozen coast where the land fell away toward the sea, giving the elevation change the shot required, and where the layered Arctic winds came off the water in exactly the shifting, treacherous patterns that matched the original. Reyes rigged the module to a secure feed so that Douglas Haynes in Brussels could watch in real time, and so that the instant the vault opened, its contents would transmit to a dozen destinations at once, prosecutors and oversight bodies and journalists beyond any power to recall. Evelyn lay in the position she'd been built for the rifle, an extension of her body, her eye to the scope and 4,112 meters away, at the very edge of the possible a target waited, that Holloway had spent an hour placing with a laser rangefinder to the exact distance. Feed is live, Reyes said. Haynes is watching. Module is armed and reading. Ma'am, it's monitoring your biometrics right now. Heart rate is, sir. It's at 71. It needs to be under 50. The vault won't accept the shot until you're under 50. I know, Evelyn breathed. Give me a minute. Callahan lay beside her, closed his voice low. Take your time. There's no clock on this. Just breathe. But there was a clock on it, and they all knew it because Reyes's other screen was tracking something else. Something that made the whole operation a race. Sir, Reyes said quietly so as not to break Evelyn's concentration. I've got movement, vehicles, coming up the coast road. Fast, multiple. It's Stennett. He found us. He's 10 minutes out, maybe less. He tracked the feed, Haynes said grimly over the line. The transmission has a signature. He must have people monitoring for exactly this. Evelyn, whatever you're going to do, you have less than 10 minutes to do it before Harold Stennett arrives with everything he has left. Evelyn didn't move. Her breathing had slowed, but the module still read 71, then 68, then 66. She couldn't force it lower. The fear was there, the pressure, the 10-minute clock, the knowledge that if she failed, the vault would lock forever and everything would be for nothing. I can't get under it, she whispered, and there was panic creeping into her voice now, the first real panic Callahan had ever heard from her. Every time I get close, I think about Stennett coming. I think about failing. I think about all of you dying because I couldn't do the one thing and my heart climbs and I can't get it down. Vail was right, I've changed too much. I can't be the weapon anymore. I broke the thing that made me useful. Evelyn, Callahan's voice cut through calm and steady. Stop trying to be the weapon. You're right, you can't. That person's gone. Good, let her stay gone. He moved closer. Listen to me. Forget the vault, forget Stennett, forget the clock. I want you to think about one thing, just what am I in? A pause. The man who burned the eggs, Dr. Feld, his kids, the reason you didn't take the shot, the reason you're here at all. Evelyn's breathing hitched. There are children out there right now, Callahan said softly, whose parents are the next name on Stennett's list. There are people like Feld, people who burn the eggs and love their kids and are about to become inconvenient to a powerful man. And every one of them is depending on what's in that vault. On you, not on the weapon. On you, Evelyn Carter, the woman who learned that some things are worth more than the mission. His voice dropped to almost nothing. You don't need to feel nothing. You need to feel everything, all of it, and pour every ounce of it into this one shot. Not cold, warm, so full of love for every stranger this saves that there's no room left for fear. That's your peace. That's your under 50. Not emptiness. The exact opposite of emptiness. And something happened in Evelyn Carter's face. The panic drained away. Not into the old cold emptiness, but into something Callahan had never seen, a kind of luminous total calm, the calm of a person who has finally understood exactly who they are and exactly what they're for. Under 50, Reyes breathed, staring at the screen in disbelief. Sir, she's at 49, 47, 44. It's the modules accepting it. The biometric profile is it's reading her as valid. It's how is she? Because she's not empty, Callahan said quietly, watching her. She's full, fuller than she's ever been. Vale built a lock for the weapon. He never imagined the day the person would be more focused than the weapon ever was. He never understood that the deepest calm doesn't come from feeling nothing. It comes from finally being at peace with everything. Evelyn Carter lay on the frozen coast 4,112 meters from her target, her heart slow and steady and completely at peace, and she began to solve the impossible shot for the second time in her life. But this time she solved it not as an instrument someone else had built, but as a woman who had chosen freely with a full and human heart to point the most precise weapon ever made at the truth and pull the trigger. Winds shifting at altitude, she murmured, reading the sky. Correcting. The bullet's going to be in the air for 10 seconds. The earth turns underneath it. I aim for where the world will be, not where it is. Her fingers settled onto the trigger. This is for the man who burned the eggs, and every man like him, and the little girl in Brussels who's about to learn what her father really is. A breath. And for the 6-year-old they took who finally gets to choose. They're 5 minutes out, Reyes whispered. Ma'am, please. Quiet, Evelyn said gently. I need to hear the wind. The whole world went silent, and Evelyn Carter, at the edge of the possible, at the edge of the sea that couldn't kill her, took the shot. The rifle spoke, and the sound rolled out across the frozen coast. And then there was nothing but the 10 longest seconds any of them had ever lived. The bullet crossing 2.5 miles of shifting air, the earth turning beneath it, every variable that Vale had spent 23 years teaching her to hold in her mind, resolving into a single point 4,112 meters away. Impact, Reyes choked. Direct impact, dead center of the modules reading it. It's, oh my God, sir. It matches the ballistic signature. Matches. It's the vault. The vault is... The screen flooded with data. The second partition, 40 times larger than the 17 kills, the entire hidden history of the program cracked open under the impossible shot and poured out onto the secure feed transmitting to a dozen destinations at once, into Douglas Haynes' waiting hands in Brussels, into oversight offices and prosecutors and journalists across 3 continents, beyond any power on earth to recall or bury or erase. It's out, Reyes said, tears streaming down his face. It's out, it's transmitting. Haynes has it, they all have it. It's ma'am. You did it, you opened it, it's done, it's really done. And then Vale's voice from where he sat, watching, quiet and stunned. Impossible, he whispered. The biometric profile. She was warm. She was full of feeling. The lock should have rejected her. I built it to reject exactly that. I built it so the weapon could open it, but never the woman. He looked at Evelyn with an expression of complete and utter defeat, and something else underneath it, something that might have been wonder. How? How did you open a lock designed to keep out everything you'd become? Evelyn lifted her eye from the scope. She was crying, but she was smiling, and it was the first fully unguarded smile Callahan had seen on her face in all the hours he'd known her. Because you got it backwards, Marcus, she said. You thought the perfect shot came from a person who felt nothing. You spent my whole childhood emptying me out because you thought emptiness was the path to perfection. She wiped her eyes. But the most perfect shot I ever took in my life, I just took with a full heart. Because I finally had a reason. Not orders, a reason. And it turns out a person with a reason is steadier than a weapon with none. You never understood that, you couldn't. It was the one thing you weren't capable of feeling, so you couldn't build for it. She sat up. You built a cage and called it a lock. And a woman with a full heart just walked right through it. But there was no time to sit with the victory because the vehicles were coming and Harold Stennett arrived with everything he had left. He came out of the lead vehicle himself, which surprised all of them because men like Stennett did not expose themselves. But the data was out now, and Stennett knew it, and a man who has lost everything stops calculating and starts destroying. He came across the frozen ground with his remaining men behind him, and his face, when Callahan finally saw the man in person, was not the face of the cold and smiling voice from the radio. It was the face of a man watching his entire world collapse in real time, and it was terrible. "You," Stennett said, and his voice shook with fury. "You opened it. You put it out there. Do you have any idea what you've destroyed? Do you have any idea what I built decades? Decades of careful work, and you, a rescue pilot and a broken weapon, you've torn it all down in a single night." He raised a pistol, and it was pointed at Evelyn. "If I can't have the vault, then at least I can have the satisfaction of putting you back in the ground where the ocean was supposed to leave you." And Callahan moved to step in front of her, and so did Holloway, and so did Voss, all of them at once, three men with no weapons putting their bodies between Harold Stennett and the woman they'd all decided was worth dying for. But Evelyn Carter stood up, and gently, firmly, she moved them aside, and she stepped forward to face Stennett herself unarmed, her rifle lowered, her hands empty. "Go ahead," she said quietly. "Shoot me, but it won't change anything. The vault is open. The truth is out. Every name, every operation, every child you took, and every person you murdered, it's in front of the whole world right now, and there is nothing you can do to put it back." She took another step toward him, calm and unafraid. "You spent your whole life believing you were untouchable, that there was always another judge to buy, another witness to silence, another asset to point at your problems. And now, for the first time, there's nothing you can do. No amount of money, no amount of power. The truth is simply out, and it's bigger than you, and you can't reach it." Another step. "You're not a powerful man anymore, Harold. You're just a man with a gun and no future. And I've been looking down the barrel of men like you my entire life. You don't frighten me. You never did. You were always just a scared little man giving orders from a safe distance, letting people like Vale do the dirty work, letting children pay the price for your ambition." She stopped close now, close enough that the pistol was inches from her chest. "So pull the trigger if that's what's left of you. But know that you're doing it in front of a dozen cameras on a live feed, watched by the very prosecutor who's about to spend the rest of his life putting your empire in the ground. Make it easy for him. Add murder to the list." Harold Stennett's hand shook, and Callahan watched the man understand finally completely that he had lost, that there was no shot he could take that didn't make it worse, that the woman in front of him had already won, and there was nothing left to do about it. And in that moment of hesitation, the coast, filled with the sound of engines and helicopters, came in low over the water, and armed figures in the markings of an international task force spilled out onto the frozen ground, weapons raised because Douglas Haynes, watching from Brussels, had made his calls the moment the data started transmitting, and the handful of people he trusted had moved faster than anyone believed possible. "Harold Stennett," a voice boomed over a loudspeaker, "drop the weapon. You are under arrest. There is nowhere left to go." And Harold Stennett, the man who had controlled off-the-record armies, who had murdered and stolen and built an empire in the dark, looked around at the ring of weapons pointed at him and at the woman he tried to drown, standing calm and victorious before him, and the pistol slipped from his fingers and fell to the frozen ground, and he sank to his knees, a small and defeated man in the cold Arctic dawn. It was over, and it had been won not by the weapon Vale built, but by the woman she'd become. In the weeks that followed, the world learned everything. The 17 kills and the evidence behind each one. The hidden history in the vault, decades of operations, dozens of assets, a whole architecture of murder, dressed up as national security, and turned in the end into a private tool for a powerful man's ambitions. Harold Stennett's empire collapsed under the weight of it, contract by contract, name by name. And Douglas Haynes finally, after 15 years, got to serve the warrants he'd been dreaming of. Marcus Vale kept his word and testified against Stennett, against the program, against himself. And if there was no redemption in it, there was at least a kind of truth, and the old man seemed at the end almost grateful to finally tell it. And the other children, the other assets the program had made and used and discarded, the ones whose records had poured out of the open vault, they were found one by one and given the thing none of them had ever had, which was a name and a history and the truth of what had been done to them, and a chance, however late, to become people instead of weapons. Callahan went back to his squadron, and the first thing he did was call his daughter, and he did not miss her next birthday or any birthday after. Because he had learned on a frozen coast, watching a woman open a vault with a full heart, that the people who love you are not a liability to be managed. They are the reason. They are the whole reason. And Evelyn Carter, who had been pulled from the seat clutching a rifle like her life depended on it, finally set the rifle down. She testified in every proceeding, said every name, made them all look at what had been done. And when it was finished, when the last warrant was served and the last truth was told, she was free for the first time in her life, free to be no one's weapon and no one's asset and no one's tool, free to simply be a person in the world. Someone asked her once, a journalist near the end, how she had survived. 3 days in the freezing Atlantic, the impossible shot, the hallway, the runway, the vault. How had one person survived all of it? And Evelyn Carter thought about the ocean that couldn't kill her, and the handler who couldn't own her, and the powerful man who couldn't break her, and the pilot who came back for her when nobody ever had. They built me to survive, she said. That was their mistake. They made me impossible to kill, and then they gave me a reason to live. And a person who is impossible to kill, with a reason to live, and the freedom to finally choose her own target. She smiled. That's not a weapon anymore. That's just a free woman who refuses to disappear. They had abandoned her at sea for 3 days, and they had been certain the ocean would finish what they'd started. But the woman they threw into the dark came back holding. The truth took the impossible shot one final time with a full and human heart, and brought the whole empire of lies crashing down into the light. And in the end, the frozen woman on the wreckage did not merely survive. She won.